He's refused to say he has confidence in him. That is really significant because we could be seeing some action from him later. I saw him walk through the cafes in Parliament in Portcullis House about an hour and a half ago. He was striding through without really caring the world. I wonder whether he thinks this could be his moment, of course. He is being seen by many as a person who could replace Sir Keir Starmer. He's a very good communicator, although I think many in his team don't think he has the support necessary amongst the MPs to replace Sir Keir Starmer. But absolutely high drama being played out. We saw the Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, resign yesterday. We saw the head of comms, Tim Allen, go today. Now we see the Scottish Labour leader saying he has no confidence in the Prime Minister and it's time for a change. We now have 11 or 12 cabinet ministers saying they back Sir Keir Starmer, but crucially the ones who we think oppose him, who want to replace him, they've stayed silent. This is absolutely the most dramatic time I can remember in politics, well, since the last time under the Tories.
Just running through that list as well, I'm here in the studio in Westminster with Sebastian Salek, who's my right-hand man, of course my left-hand man if you like, but just going through that list of who hasn't come out in support, like very, very telling. You're correct. Shabana Mahmood, Wes Streeting, add to that list one Ed Miliband, who was touting his name around at the weekend as a kind of New York mayoral-style left-wing rescue job for the party. Emma Reynolds has not yet come out in support. She's DEFRA. Lisa Nandy not come out in support. And also Douglas Alexander. Those names still very much silent. We can see the battle lines being drawn up already, Chris Hope. And as you said there, the people on this list, at least 3 of them would fancy their chances at a tilt of the leadership job. Shabana Mahmood, Wes Streeting, Ed Miliband. Of course, the cabinet isn't occupied any longer by the former Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner. You won't expect her to come out supporting Sir Keir Starmer anytime soon. This is starting to look like the end of the empire. The knives are being drawn, and one by one, the daggers are being slammed betwixt the shoulder blades of the Prime Minister, Chris Hope.
Yes, and yet you do have, 12 to 14 members of the cabinet saying they support the Prime Minister, but it's interesting who the others who say they're not. Now, I should remind viewers and listeners that the day is by no means over. We're facing a full-scale meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party at 6 o'clock. That will be extraordinary. I'll be there in Parliament for GBNews outside the room, trying to find out what's going on. Will there be a show of hands? I recall back in early 2010 when there was an attempt to have a show of hands of support or not for the Prime Minister, for Gordon Brown, when there's concern about his leadership. Will members of Parliament who don't like Sir Keir Starmer demand a public show of hands in that meeting? That could be dramatic too. This absolutely is existential for Sir Keir Starmer. He's been trying to hold on to power for the past 8-9 days. It looks like this issue with Peter Mandelson could be this could detonate under him. He's lost, as I say, Morgan McSweeney yesterday. We know about Tim Allen going today. These are backroom people, but since 2:30 today is the first time we've had senior people come out for or against Sir Keir Starmer since only Pat McFadden, the Work and Pensions Secretary, has spoken out over the weekend. Again, 12 of them in favour, but look at the ones who aren't. And what are they doing? I mean, right now, the whips will be on the phone to them. Maybe even Sir Keir Starmer is on the phone, begging them to tweet. Please tweet. We need to move on together. But of course, you've got David Lammy there saying, I'm not going nowhere. We may have that clip now. I can play what David Lammy told me within the past half an hour. David Lammy, is it time for the PM to go?
We've waited 14 years to get here. No.
What said Alan Sarwar, David Lammy?
Change, these 3 won't.
And there you have it. David Lammy saying we're waiting 14 years to get to this point, and we're not going to waste it. Now, what that means is David Lammy knows what's at stake. This entire government, Martin, is at stake, according to David Lammy, the Deputy Prime Minister. If you replace Sir Keir Starmer, the government can't really carry on without a general election. He recognises that need there is to have an election to give the next leader the right to run the country. Now that's what Sir Keir Starmer was saying to me to us last Thursday at that speech in Hastings. He feels the mandate given to Labour back in July 2024 was a personal mandate for him. That's often how leaders think of it, and he knows that if he goes, why should, let's say, Angela Rayner, why is she any better? Of course, she's an MP, but not in cabinet, and indeed she was judged to be ill-equipped to be a cabinet minister just 5 months ago by Sir Laurie Magnus, the ethics czar. How can you point to somebody who failed the test of the ministerial code 5 months to be Prime Minister now? Why is Ed Miliband any better? He lost the election spectacularly in 2015 as Labour leader and has been rebuilding his policies since then. Yes, he's popular amongst the base, but why in a wider country, given that rejection? Wes Streeting, why on earth should he have the chance, given he was so tied to Peter Mandelson? He's also not as trusted amongst the selectorate, the MPs in the party who he needs. Maybe Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, doing very well, but untested, I think, in other policy areas. There's no one really around who can replace Sir Keir Starmer, and that is Labour's problem. There are concerns about him as Prime Minister, as Labour leader, but frankly, who can replace him? But those three I mentioned, or those four I mentioned, none of them have said they support the Prime Minister. And frankly, Martin, the clock is ticking. 40 minutes ago they had the chance to do it. They haven't done. This is a Shakespearean drama of the highest proportions.
To be or not to be sacked as Prime Minister? That is the question. And the way it's looking, the clock is ticking, as you said there. It really is turning into a huge, huge drama. Chris, we'll let you take a bit of a breather, mate. By Jove, you've been working hard and the day is just beginning, my friend. Have a cup of tea, have a breather. Let's get back into the studio. I'm delighted to be joined by Sebastian Salek, who's a Labour councillor, correct, for Waltham Forest. We're frantically going through the list of those who have presented or supported or not, and you're going through social media accounts, and by my reckoning, those conspicuous by their silence for support. Shabana Mahmood, Home Secretary, Wes Streeting, Health Secretary, and you said he was just doorstepped a moment ago and he breezed past the press without saying a word.
About half an hour ago, I think, but let's remember that these are coming through thick and fast. We're getting people within the last few minutes declaring, so we may still have some to hear from. What's interesting to me, though, is that while it's yes, not a great day for the government. We're not at that stage of, remember Boris Johnson in 22, cabinet minister after cabinet minister resigning. We haven't quite got there yet.
Well, the day is young.
Well, that's it. There seems to be room to run. Let's see what comes out of that PRP meeting tonight, because that would be a big chance for Starmer to try and calm some nerves.
Well, good luck with that. Ed Miliband hasn't declared support, but Ed Miliband has been sort of flying kites all weekend about his own leadership bid. And also Emma Reynolds, DEFRA, I would have thought she would come out and support. We'll have to wait and see. Lisa Nandy, of course, the Departments of Culture, Media and Sport, also hasn't come out in support yet of Sir Keir Starmer. 20 in the cabinet, that's 1/4 of cabinet ministers yet to present. That's not good metrics. 6 p.m, we're expecting at least, let's be brutal about this, at least 3 people on this list will no doubt tonight at 6 p.m. ask the Prime Minister to resign as Prime Minister, now that Anas Sarwar is first up the ladder. And when that starts happening, you reach that critical mass, you reach that point of no return. On a serious point, I know you're trying to put a positive spin on it, I know you're a loyal party man, but the end is nigh.
Yeah, look, I want to be really honest with you. We're not at that point yet, but you're right, we may well be there by tonight. If that meeting doesn't go well, if you get more following Anas Sarwar, then it's going to be curtains for Starmer. It's going to be very difficult to see him limp through. I do think that will be a shame, though, purely because we have to address one agenda. We have to see an agenda play out. We haven't had one since David Cameron, and I worry that we're becoming like Italy, where every couple of years we throw out our Prime Minister and the economy takes a hit. You've seen bond yields go up today. That means things for people. That means the cost of living gets harder. So this isn't just Westminster drama. This is reality for a lot of people.
But reality bites, Sebastian, and let's look at the scores on the doors so far. The bodies dropping from the sky, 2 chiefs of staff, 4 directors of communication, 11 ministers, including the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, who quit, of course, over a £40,000 tax bill, council tax bill. Astonishing that she fancies the chances as being the replacement when she's still potentially under investigation. A corruption minister who quit over corruption. A homeless minister who quit over being a dodgy landlord. A transport minister who quit over a fraud charge. The Labour Party promised change. This is more of the same old rot, and the electorate are sick to the back teeth of it.
Well, it is and it isn't. And look, I think everybody who has resigned from this government has done so for the right reasons. And there's nobody who I think should have stayed in post after what they did. But they did promise more transparency and more accountability. I think that's the reality. Whereas if you look back to the Boris Johnson days, there were cabinet ministers clinging on. Look at Priti Patel, look at Dominic Raab, after doing really serious things. This government, when somebody crosses the line and does something they shouldn't, however minor, they are going very quickly. And I think that is something positive at least.
OK, let's have a quick reminder. It's already breathless. It's only 3:15. Have a quick reminder about what happened. Around about 40 minutes ago, the leader of Labour Party in Scotland, Anna Sarwar, first up the ladder, asking the Prime Minister to resign. Here's what he said.
The distraction needs to end and the leadership in Downing Street has to change. We cannot allow the failures at the heart of Downing Street to mean the failures continue here in Scotland.
Sebastian Salek, what I thought was so interesting about that was the use of language. They promised they were going to be different, but it's not been good enough. This is a Labour man calling Westminster they. He's already put in that distance, just like Nicola Sturgeon did. Westminster, the foe, Scotland, the friend. All I care about is Scotland. But here's an interesting point. Labour are in third position in Scotland. There was a YouGov poll out last week. They're behind reform. The Labour Party are sinking north of the border as fast as Sir Keir Starmer is in Westminster. There's a political brutality to what Anna Sarwar has done here, because he knows that with Sir Keir Starmer, Labour north of the border are dead.
Yeah, I'll come to that in a second. I have just heard from Emma Reynolds, who's tweeting and saying that she's standing by the Prime Minister.
So she's with him, OK.
Yeah.
So that means only who haven't come out in support yet, by our maths, Shabana Mahmood, Wes Streeting, Ed Miliband and Lisa Nandy, the four ministers who haven't come out in support yet for the Prime Minister. Emma Reynolds goes in this column. This is all live news. This is how it works. Thank you very much for your input. But back to that point about Anna Sarwar. He's thrown Starmer out the window to save his own hide.
Yeah, so there's a framework that I use to understand politics, and it is that everybody is trying to do their job. And once you think through that prism, you understand what everybody's going to do, and often you can guess what they're going to do before they do it. And Anna Sarwar's job is to win big in Scotland in May, and he's now seeing that it's going to be difficult to do that with the story that's whipped up over the last few weeks. And it's a shame that it's picked up so much momentum despite the disclosures not coming out, because that's really the evidential base for all of this. If it turns out that Starmer was honest all along, there is some dignity he can cling on to, and I think he probably might be. But the problem is we're kind of beyond that now. Nobody really cares what's in them. The political momentum has moved on, and that evidential base doesn't really matter anymore, and I think that's a great shame.
Do you buy this notion? There's a lot of people saying Sir Keir Starmer is a good man. He's a decent man. He cares about the country, but he just isn't very good at politics. He doesn't have that political antenna. He doesn't get what makes the country tick. He's a bureaucrat. He's a process man. He's robotic, and he doesn't get the beating heart of the country. Or is that a cover story? Actually, has he just got things consistently and repeatedly from day one wrong? He called people far right after the Southport riots, farming, pensioners, you name it. Practically everything Sir Keir Starmer done has been the opposite of what the electorate want.
Yeah, do you know what? I genuinely, in my heart of hearts, believe he's a decent man, and I think he's trying to do the right thing. And you listen to people like Gordon Brown, and I think Alistair Campbell as well, have said similar things, and these are men who know him, who have worked with him. You get a lot of sleazy figures in politics, don't you, who go into it for the wrong reasons.
Peter Mandelson?
Well, quite, sadly. And
that's the point. You know, Sir Keir Starmer's fingerprints are on the safe. They're on the crime scene.
Well, that's it. And
clearly,
as Prime Minister, you've got to take the rap for that, haven't you?
Well, he didn't, though. What he's done, he's thrown the bodies overboard. Under the bus, Morgan McSweeney. Under the bus, Tim Allen.
Well, that's not quite true, because they haven't been sacked. They've resigned.
Well, really? Do you believe that? I mean,
I think so.
You know the way politics works. The body goes out the window, and they hope that's enough to satiate the frenzy behind them. That's not happening. People aren't falling for this. Let's throw a junior minister out. Let's throw an advisor out. All the fangs now are poised towards Keir Starmer at 6 p.m. this evening. You have to admit, even as a born Labour Party optimist, this is looking like the end game.
Oh, yeah, it's not looking great at all. I would hope that would be clear from everything that I've said. It's really not looking good for Starmer. And I do think it's a shame that we've got to this point for the two reasons I've raised. The first, that there is no evidence base for it because we haven't seen those disclosures, but also because we need to see one politician, whoever they are, whatever party they're from, enacting an agenda. This country is being thrown from pillar to post. We get 2 years of this, we get 3 years of that, and look where it's got us. We've been doing that since 2015,
okay.
and the result is clear for us all to see.
Sebastian Salek, just a quick reminder, there are other things happening today. Prince William is landing in Saudi Arabia in about an hour's time. We'll be there live for that. And a small matter of Reform UK having their rally in Birmingham. Nigel Farage expects to take the stage about 4 o'clock today. But now, of course, there's only one story in town. The wheels are coming off the Labour Party bus. Will the captain be the one that has to go? Chris Hope, let's get back to Downing Street. Chris, what do you got for us?
5 minutes is that Ed Miliband has now said he supports the Prime Minister. Now, he's important. He's one of, I would say, 3 people left who may not have looked at my shoulder to see if David Lammy is leaving yet, not left yet. Ed Miliband is now saying he supports the Prime Minister. Now, he took a while to respond, 40 minutes after some of his cabinet colleagues did that, to head off the Anna Sarwar challenge. But Ed Miliband says this: Keir Starmer has earned the right to deliver the change he has promised and do what he cares about, which is to serve the country. This is not the time for the government to turn inwards on itself. We must focus on delivering the change we promised the country. Now, that is vital because Ed Miliband is one of several, a handful of people in the cabinet who could have challenged him. We also heard from, let's look here, we haven't yet to hear from Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary. The clock is ticking, Shabana Mahmood. 50 minutes now since others supported Keir Starmer. Why haven't you, is what we said in number 10 Downing Street. Others too quickly there: Lisa Nandy, Douglas Alexander is supportive, and Jonathan Reynolds, Chief Whip, he won't be expected to speak, and Angela Smith. So really we're waiting for Shabana Mahmood and Liz Kendall.
And Chris, I'm just getting a line in here. It's been reported Wes Streeting has come out saying Keir Starmer doesn't need to resign. It has not been the best week for him. But look, we have to leave it there for now, Chris. We need to get to Saudi. OK, Chris Hope, sorry, let's get back to you, Chris Hope. Sorry, I get some confusing information in my ear. Chris Hope, let's get back to you there. Wes Streeting, we've just heard, has come out now in support. That only leaves now, by my mathematics, only Shabana Mahmood, who hasn't come out in support of Sir Keir Starmer from the Labour Party cabinet.
Yeah, Jonathan Reynolds, the Chief Whip, who I saw going into the building behind me about 2 hours ago, he, of course, has supported the Prime Minister, as you might expect, as Chief Whip. Crucially, Douglas Alexander, the Scottish Secretary, he now backs Keir Starmer, and that's quite important in Scotland. That leaves Anna Sarwar completely isolated now. He's got the Scottish Secretary in London supporting the man who Anna Sarwar wants to remove. I mean, frankly, how that plays out in coming days in Scotland will be interesting. Let's face it, if Keir Starmer survives this, Anna Sarwar's gone over the top, and frankly, no one's gone with him. He'll just get taken down by enemy fire. So let's see what happens to Anna Sarwar in coming days. Wes Streeting, we understand, has come out in support of the Prime Minister. He's given an interview to a podcast today, we think, and that's where he may have spoken. But I've got to say, I haven't yet to see him on my Twitter timeline, and that's the clock that's ticking. Not really talking to a podcast, but frankly, putting your microphone down, Wes Streeting, and start to tweet support for the PM, because the longer you're not on there supporting the PM, the more question marks are being raised. Shabana Mahmood, she hasn't spoken. I should say, by the way, these cabinet ministers who are held out giving support for Keir Starmer, they may have very good reasons, because they are also running the country. I mean, it could well be that Shabana Mahmood is doing some very important work in the Home Office and hasn't got time to look at social media. I get that, so not being too critical of them, but these things matter in a febrile time. All people must pull behind the Prime Minister, so we haven't quite got the full slate supporting him yet. It's looking we're going towards that point. It just shows to me, Martin, frankly, how far we've come in a week. I mean, where were we a week ago? We weren't here.
Chris, I need to interject. I know you're excited. Shabana Mahmood can't support the Prime Minister because she's speaking, President, I understand, in the Commons. She's answering questions in the Commons, so she is engaged in other matters, so she can't tweet out yet. But I think she's the only one now who hasn't presented.
Nandy.
Lisa Nandy. Has Lisa Nandy presented yet, to your knowledge, Chris Hope, in support of Keir Starmer?
No, yet. We're waiting for... No, Lisa Nandy, I think. Liz Kendall, waiting on her. and Baroness Smith, Angela Smith, but she's not very relevant, leader of the House of Lords. So we're really waiting for those two. There could well be reasons why either of those two haven't spoken. I haven't heard yet from Lucy Powell. Now, she's really important because, of course, she is the deputy leader of the party, elected, beat Bridget Phillipson last September. Why hasn't she said that she supports the Prime Minister? She speaks for the members. She's a member of the political cabinet. That hasn't happened yet. I don't know why, and that is interesting. We haven't also heard from Angela Rayner, of course, who led the way last Wednesday to sort out the issue of the Peter Mandelson vetting papers being released to Parliament first.
Thank you very much for that latest update there, Chris. So, as we understand, we're frantically checking here with Sebastian Salek in the studio for those who haven't supported the Prime Minister yet from the Labour Party cabinet, Shabana Mahmood, but we're trying to... Sorry? OK, Chris, thank you very, very much for talking to us there from Downsbury. We'll come back to you throughout the rest of the show. Let's just go over Sebastian Salek again. Take a moment to take a breath and come out to those who have and haven't supported the Prime Minister from the Cabinet. So Shabana Mahmood has not yet, but we were just saying that she's speaking in the Commons at present, so she's a little bit otherwise engaged. Wes Streeting, a short moment ago, was doorstepped, and he said the Prime Minister does not need to resign. Ed Miliband, a very short moment ago, has come out in support, but on the haven't supported yet list.
So we've had a change. Lisa Nandy has now also come out. She's supporting the Prime Minister. Let's find that post from her. She says, "We were elected just 18 months ago to fundamentally change this country and improve lives after more than a decade of decline. The Prime Minister is right to take that obligation seriously, and he has my full support as he works in difficult circumstances to deliver." So support from Lisa Nandy there, and support from Angela Smith as well, who is the Labour leader in the Lords. That's according to Sienna Rogers from the House magazine.
So that appears to be almost all of the Cabinet have put their support behind the Prime Minister.
Which will certainly go some way to diffuse this situation. That's a good position for Starmer to be in going into that PLP meeting tonight. OK,
thank you very much. Now, I believe we have a guest lined up. Who's our next guest? OK, we've got Dan Hannan down the line. Dan Hannan, thank you very much for joining us. Well, I mean, talk about psychodrama that Kemi Badenoch talks about. This is psychodrama on steroids. The Labour Party shambolically falling apart before our very eyes.
Well, and worse than that, all making themselves accomplices, right? Do you remember the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, that poem of Coleridge's, where one guy brings the curse because he shoots the albatross, but then all the crewmates go, yeah, he was right to do that, and so they all bring the curse on themselves. And that's what the Cabinet are doing. They're not going to be able to say after this, oh, well, it was all just Starmer, because they've all made themselves accomplices in his dithering, in his weakness, in his dishonesty, his flip-flopping, and the chaos, the misjudgments that have characterised his leadership.
Dan, what do we expect is going to happen at 6 p.m. tonight? Because, I mean, we've seen a chaotic throwing of support for Keir Starmer from his cabinet, but Anna Sawar going up the ladder like this, surely now it shows the final days of Keir Starmer are upon us.
I've little doubt that he will be out. What's interesting, though, is you sometimes get these prime ministers who just can't see what the rest of us can see. So if you go back, Edward Heath had to be kind of dragged out of Downing Street. Couldn't accept that he'd lost the election. Gordon Brown was in a similar category when he lost in 2010. Most recently, Theresa May just could not understand that her party had turned against her. And Starmer, I think, in his kind of dim, sort of podgy way, is like that. He's just a naturally stubborn fella. But all these others who you've just been quoting, all of those names that Chris Hope was just rattling off there, they have made a choice now to make themselves part of this problem. And I do want to take on this idea that he's gaining ground, and you had it in your discussion just there, that he's kind of a nice man but just not very good at politics. He's too naive, kind of, too high-minded. I mean, let's just think right from the beginning of the ways in which he's contradicted himself back and forth in the most nakedly ambitious way. Jeremy Corbyn should be Prime Minister, then Jeremy Corbyn is out of the party. We should rejoin the EU, no we shouldn't. We should at least go into the customs union, no we shouldn't. Well, maybe we should. Israel is right to blockade Gaza, no it's not. We're going to nationalise all these oil companies and electricity companies, no we're not. He'll say anything that he feels will help him out in a given moment, in a tight spot. And that's I'm afraid, what we're seeing from him again now. But what's slightly more shocking to me is that we're also seeing it, as we've just heard, from pretty much the whole Cabinet.
And Lord Hanan, we see in these circumstances the rearranging of the deck chairs, perhaps is the charitable way of putting it. But look at the unfavourability polls, not just of the leader, but of the entire party, and the withering revelations we've heard from over the weekend of those who've been inside focus groups, and utter contempt for the entire political establishment, which I suspect cannot be sorted out simply by changing who's the captain of the Titanic.
Well, it depends whom you replace him with, right? I mean, I think the fundamental problem is that things don't seem to work very much in Britain, right? We're paying more and more tax, and public services aren't improving. The only answer to that is to do something that in the short term is quite unpopular, which is to cut spending quite radically. Then we can get growth again, then we'll have more surpluses to spend in the future. But paradoxically, because they are not willing to risk a bad newspaper headline, because the Labour Party won't sacrifice a little bit of short-term popularity for long-term prosperity, it actually fails in its own terms, and they've ended up being very unpopular as well. And I don't really see that changing, whoever takes over, unless there is a fresh mandate, right? We've just seen that even the feeblest attempts to slightly slow the increase in welfare spending, not to cut it, not even to hold it level, just slightly to slow the acceleration, was unacceptable to Labour backbenchers. Any new Prime Minister who wants to put this country on a stable economic footing, I think is going to need a mandate. They're going to need to go to the country and say, look, we all accept that taxes need to come down, spending needs to come down. Give me your vote to do it.
And then we could see at 6 p.m. tonight the nuclear options. Keir Starmer says, let's take this to the electorate. No doubt you'd be licking your lips at the prospect of facing the music. I suspect that may not happen. But look, thank you for your insight. It's always supremely appreciated. Thank you very much for joining us today on the show. Appreciate your time. Now, there are other news stories happening in the universe today. And, of course, one of them, a huge story. Prince William, he's just arrived in Saudi Arabia, the most popular royal, well, half of the most popular royal couple are there in the Saudi Arabian desert kingdom in Riyadh. Our man, our mover and shaker, Jack Carson, is there for us. Jack Carson, give us the latest.
Well, thank you very much. Of course, this is the first official visit of the Prince of Wales, Prince William, to Saudi Arabia. He's just arrived here on the tarmac, the King Khalid International Airport, greeted by His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman bin Abdul Aziz. Just entered the terminal to receive the traditional Saudi hospitality of coffee and dates. And this is such a key, important visit, not only for Prince William personally, but also for His Majesty's government. Of course, last October, signing a £6.5 billion trade deal. The bilateral relations, the diplomatic relations between these two countries is ever growing stronger. We know the government's importance that they place on Saudi Arabia as an ally. They have been a long-standing military and security ally over recent decades, and now not just for the present but for the future too. The government see this as an important opportunity to secure those diplomatic relations for decades to come, and so they, at their request, Prince William has made this official visit to Saudi Arabia today. But for him personally, it's an important visit, taking on such a global stage, such an important role today here, as he will later meet Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He too, of course, a future king of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as Prince William is, of course, for the United Kingdom. They will most likely be kings together for decades to come, and so their own personal relationship is important. And what we're seeing really with this visit and the engagements that Prince William is taking on over the next few days is really him taking his own personality onto the world stage. He's engaging in some of the things which he finds important to him, so environment, sustainability, of course women's football as well. He'll be taking part in some training sessions of that a little bit later this week, and it is a jam-packed a few days of events here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. But it all starts, as I was saying, here with a private tour of the UNESCO World Heritage Site Al Turaif. That is where he will meet and shake the hand of the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. They will have an audience together and attend a private dinner with each other, and that is really where, not only for the diplomatic relations between the two kingdoms but also the two governments, really comes into play. And here in Saudi Arabia, Prince William has landed.
They don't know, they just see it. An hour's time.
I think earlier on, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, of course, a hugely important visit in terms of diplomatic ties and potential future trade deals. An extremely well-off part of the world. Of course, Donald Trump has welcomed their billions to his nation. But of course, overshadowing all of this, his uncle, Andrew. All revelations from the Epstein files today, not only the allegations of a sexual nature, those historical ones, of course, Andrew denying all of them, but now potential future revelations about the job he had as the international ambassador for the United Kingdom, similar to those that are haunting Peter Mandelson. Did any of that sensitive insider information get used for other nefarious purposes, perhaps? Once again, the shadow of Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted paedophile, the shadow of Prince Andrew, the former Prince Andrew, overshadowing this trip. So a huge amount to play for. We'll go back to Jack Carson later on throughout the day, of course, as the royal visits continue. We'll have some live pictures when the politics calms down, which probably won't happen any time this side of 6 p.m. Talking of which, get back to Westminster now. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by the Shadow Secretary of State for Scotland, Andrew Bowie. And, of course, I'm still joined by the Labour councillor, Sebastian Salek. Let's get to you, if I could first, Mr Bowie. Well, changes north of the border. I beg your pardon for that, but this is absolute bedlam. You've got Anas Sarwar clearly throwing Sir Keir Starmer under the bus. But, hey, that's what the Labour Party have been doing all weekend, throwing other people under the bus. The point is it now Sir Keir Starmer's time to go?
Well, I mean, what's quite clear is that the Labour Party is in complete civil war right now. You've got a leader of the Scottish Labour Party looking ahead to May's elections, conscious of where the party is in the polls, conscious of how unpopular this Prime Minister is, and calling for him to go. You've got now, it looks like, I think, most of the Cabinet coming out in support of Keir Starmer, but despite that, allies of Wes and Angela saying that they've got 80 or so supporters on each side. So this is quite clearly a government in complete chaos, in complete meltdown, unable to focus on the big issues facing the country. And frankly, I think it's incumbent on Labour MPs to do the decent thing and to put this Prime Minister out of his misery, because he cannot be enjoying the situation that he's in right now. It's not like this is the first bad call that he's made. He's been making bad calls since day one, be that on winter fuel, the family farms tax, inheritance tax. You know, there's so many things that he has gotten wrong since he became Prime Minister. It's not surprising that Anas Sarwar has called for him to go, but it is a sign of utter desperation from a man leading a Scottish Labour Party. It looks like they might even lose seats in the Scottish Parliamentary election. By the way, that's from a very low bar, given how poorly they performed last time.
I wonder how much of this is survivalism from Anas Sarwar. He called Sir Keir Starmer his friend, a good man, at the same time as sliding the blade betwixt his shoulder blades. Polling out last week showing the Labour Party has gone behind reform north of the border. We're hearing up there that they don't even want Sir Keir Starmer to go to Scotland. Yeah. So unpopular is he with voters. So how much of this is Anas Sarwar thinking, I've got a hope in hell, as long as I'm stapled to Sir Keir Starmer?
I think it's Labour Party conference in about 3 or 4 weeks' time. It's traditional for the UK party leader to address that gathering. It'll be very interesting to see whether or not that visit takes place. But as I said, this is just purely an act of desperation by the leader of the Scottish Labour Party, looking at the polls and seeing what we all know to be true, that Labour will not form the next Scottish Government. Indeed, they could come third, or indeed some polls suggesting possibly even fourth, losing seats, and Anas lashing out. Now, that's not to distract from the fact that the Prime Minister is in a dreadfully perilous situation. And frankly, as I said, Labour MPs should do the decent thing and put him out of his misery. For the country's sake, we need a government that's focused on the big issues facing the country, that's getting back to economic growth, showing leadership, and giving this country some certainty and security moving forward. But all it speaks to is a party that's completely riven, obsessed with navel-gazing, in civil war, and we need to get this country back on track.
What do you think is going to happen at this 6 p.m. meeting tonight? I mean, in a sense, a first moment of danger has passed. At 2:30, around about an hour ago, it was looking very, very, very bleak for Sir Keir Starmer, with Anas Sarwar coming out and asking for his reservation. We've since basically had all, I believe, Sebastian Salek, all of the Labour cabinet have now come out in support behind Sir Keir Starmer. So it's past that first moment of danger. They could there have backed Anas Sarwar and forced Sir Keir Starmer out tonight. So do you think he's got through past the first landmine? 6 p.m. he might be safe tonight?
So, I mean, having sat through many of the equivalent meetings within the Parliamentary Conservative Party over the years, from Theresa May, Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, it's very difficult to get any sense of really of the situation at these meetings. The government whip's office, if they're doing their job right, will pack the room with supporters. There'll be a lot of noise in support of the Prime Minister, and there will be planted speeches in support of his premiership and in support of what he's doing. I could pretty much write the speeches for the individual Labour MPs for them, given how many times I heard them when we were in government going through our various crises. So I don't know if tonight we're really going to see very much. What we'll be telling is in the days to come, whether or not there's more revelations from the Epstein files about who knew what and when, what exactly Peter Mandelson did get up to. But the fact remains that last week at Prime Minister's questions, under questioning from Kemi Badenoch, the Prime Minister admitted that he did know of the continuing relationship between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein, and he still put him in the position of being one of this country's most important and sensitive diplomats on the world stage. Now, that is a catastrophic error of judgment, and it only adds to the list of bad errors of judgment, bad judgment calls the Prime Minister made since he got put into office in July 2024.
Super. Sebastian Salek, can I get to you? I believe there's been a huge conversation was about Wes Streeting. Wes Streeting over the weekend was kind of put in the frame of having an historical link to Peter Mandelson. Of course, a lot of photographs of him from back in the day campaigning together, part of that Blairite kind of orbit. And there have been a lot of question marks around potential WhatsApp messages coming out in the future investigation, who was messaged by whom and to what reason. And I believe Wes Streeting has spoken just now about that topic.
Yeah, that's right. So I think some concern in the Streeting camp that this is going to be used against him, and that, look, anybody who's anybody in the Labour Party will probably have been photographed with Mandelson at some point. He's a bit of a Labour celebrity, obviously now disgraced, but that's quite normal. So what he's saying now is that he's willing to publish all of his WhatsApp conversations with Mandelson, which is a great show of transparency, and hopefully that will assuage some of the concerns around exactly what went on between Mandelson and some in Starmer's top team.
And if that is the case, then fair credit, because people want to see the full transparency, perhaps even ahead of the investigation. If you volunteer that's going to be a good thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely, it's a good thing. It speaks to transparency. It speaks more to Streeting definitely want to shore up his position ahead of any leadership challenge that might come. He wants to clear the decks, show that he was not as involved as some people are suggesting with Peter Mandelson. You can trust me. I wasn't, part of this tawdry situation. So I think it speaks more to Wes's ambition than anything else. But yes, of course, transparency is right and proper, and we've been calling for everybody that has known anything about the situation to be full and upfront about what they have.
OK, Andrew, I hope you can stick with us for another few moments if you could, because I need to go back to Downing Street now. Our man Chris Hope there outside that fabled door. Chris Hope, it's happening thick and fast. What's the very latest, my friend?
OK, Martin, the latest we can say is that the entire Cabinet now supports Sir Keir Starmer. So, in a sense, Anna Sarwar, the Labour leader, an hour and 10 minutes ago, went over the top saying it's time for a change in Downing Street, and no one went with him, not amongst the top team around Sir Keir Starmer's leadership cabinet table, and also not on the back benches. I'm looking here, the most recent tweet on social media from Angela Rayner. She, of course, is the one who many think could win enough support amongst the Labour backbenches and members to replace Sir Keir Starmer. I'll just read you what she said now on social media. The recent scandal around Peter Mandelson, she says, and Jeffrey Epstein was shocking, and demands both this government and our party learn the lessons and act on them. She goes on, but the worst possible outcome response would be to play party politics or factional games. Labour's only getting started on changing things for the better. Our Employment Rights Act, renters' rights, leasehold reform, free school meals and lifting kids out of poverty. And she concludes, I urge all my colleagues to come together, remember our values and put them into practice as a team. The Prime Minister has my full support in leading us to that end. And that almost was prefigured, I think, by David Lammy. He's the Deputy Prime Minister. He, in a very dramatic moment in my time covering politics with GBNews, he pulled up in his black Range Rover just as Anna Sarwar was saying it was time for the PM to quit. I shouted a question at David Lammy, and here's what he had to say. David Lammy, is it time for the PM to go?
We've waited 14 years to get here. No.
What said Alan Sarwar, David Lammy?
Lammy, answer Kinnan.
14 years to get here, David Lammy told me outside Downing Street an hour ago. And what that means is so interesting. That means that these cabinet ministers, they've looked into the abyss and they've walked back. They've thought, if we replace Keir Starmer, what happens next? Who is the leader who can unite the party? There are too many factions. Wes Streeting not liked enough amongst backbench MPs, and maybe too close to Peter Mandelson, who's now a live rail in British politics. Angela Rayner, well, she can't do it. 5 months ago, she failed the test of the ministerial code. By all accounts, she hasn't paid her tax bill back. And who else beyond that? Maybe Shabana Mahmood, untested in wider politics. Ed Miliband, rejected by voters back in 2015, although popular amongst the members according to polling. No one really stands head and shoulders above anyone else to replace Keir Starmer, and that's why it would be a very, very messy leadership campaign, and that's why they have looked over the edge here, these ministers, by the way, to get to this point. There was silence since Pat McFadden spoke yesterday. Only he spoke today. They were very, very quiet, these ministers, but clearly something has happened behind the scenes. I wonder if what David Miliband said there is what's been going on here. He said that if we replace Keir Starmer, there'll have to be an election. And 14 years to get here and then risk it all, handing it all to Reform UK ahead in the polls, was the subtext of what he was saying. That's not what Labour can do and not what we should do, David Lammy was saying. So for now, Sir Keir Starmer lives to fight another hour or two, maybe? We don't know, because at 6 p.m. he's facing the full group of backbench Labour MPs. That will be a dramatic moment, not on camera, behind closed doors. I'll be outside. Watch it all play out live on GB News.
Chris Hope, I know that you'll have your GB News pint glass to your ear, listening in to that meeting, and we'll be there, of course, for it. And I think, actually, we have here a government who know they'd be obliterated if they face the electorate. They know they'd be turkeys voting for Christmas if they went for a general election. They absolutely know it. Every single poll since last April has seen them being just absolutely fireballed out of Downing Street. So, in a sense, they've come together through necessity and through survivalism. But Chris Hope, thanks for your updates. We'll be coming back to you at Downing Street throughout the rest of the show. Back to the studio. I'm still delighted to be joined by the Shadow Secretary of State for Scotland, Andrew Bowie, and, of course, the Labour councillor, Sebastian Salek. Sebastian, Angela Rayner has just tweeted. What's she said?
Yeah, that's right. I'll read it out to you. Here's what we got from Angela Rayner. She says, the recent scandal around Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein was shocking and demands that both this government and our party learn the lessons and act on them. But the worst possible response would be to play party politics or factional games. Labour is only getting started on changing things for the better. Our Employment Rights Act, renters' rights, leasehold reform, free school meals and lifting kids out of poverty. I urge all my colleagues to come together, remember our values and put them into practice as a team. The Prime Minister has my full support in leading us to that end.
Yeah, we were waiting for that final sentence, but there we have it.
We
Prime
got
Minister.
it.
Now remember, Sir Keir Starmer gave Angela Rayner his full support moments before she got the bullet. Remember. That's Morgan McSweeney got the full support of Sir Keir Starmer. FPMQs now he's gone under the bus. Getting the Prime Minister's full support, it feels like it should be called him Big Sam Allardyce.
Yeah, but it speaks to how quickly the situation's moved. I've been with you for 45 minutes. The narrative has already changed from the government is collapsing to Anna Sarwar as the one who's shot and missed. And even people like Angela Rayner, who are widely expected to go for the leadership at some point, are sensing that now is not the time. Now is the time to stand by the leader.
Thank you very much. I'll come to you in a moment if I could, Mr. Bowie. But let's get now to my next guest. I'm joined by the Labour Party MP, Perrin Moon. Perrin, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. So it now seems that we have the entire Labour Party cabinet coming out to support the Prime Minister. Sir Keir Starmer, would you like to throw your weight behind that?
Surprise me, Keir is an excellent leader. We were elected 18 months ago with a mandate from the people to deliver change. We have interest rates falling, we have inflation falling, we have growth going up, which means that we can get that investment into the NHS and into education. We're reducing net migration and we're closing those asylum hotels. That's the promise we gave to the electorate, and we're delivering on it.
There has been change. There have been 2 chiefs of staff who've changed, 4 directors of communications who have changed, 11 ministers have changed, including a deputy prime minister who hasn't yet paid a 40 grand council tax bill. There was change with the corruption minister who was forced to quit over corruption. There was change with the homeless minister forced to quit over being a dodgy landlord. There was change with the transport minister, all change you might say, how appropriate. She was forced to quit over a fraud charge. And there's been change with sleaze up to our armpits in the form of Peter Mandelson. You promised change. It certainly has changed. The country's got worse.
Mandelson is a despicable individual, and we should throw the book at him. There's obviously a process that has to go through. Prime Minister has apologised for that mistake. It's not going to throw us off course. Our constituents are demanding of us that we fix our public services, that we deal with the mess that we inherited from the Conservatives, we get migration properly under control, and we invest in the NHS and in education. That is our focus, day in, day out, and that's quite right. And Keir Starmer is our leader. He's led us to a historic election victory. Remember, after the debacle of the 2019 election, people said, oh, it will be a generation before Labour get in again. That's not the case. People want change, and we are utterly focused on that change.
Paramoo, they say politics is a funny old game, and it's certainly a game of 2 halves. This morning, it looked like Sir Keir Starmer will be getting the red card, and now Anas Sarwar went up the ladder and said, I don't back Sir Keir Starmer, I demand he resigns. Is Anas Sarwar now the dead man walking?
Sarwar's made a mistake. I think he's misread the Parliamentary Labour Party. And remember, it is down to the Parliamentary Labour Party. There's an awful lot of noises off. Anas, Andy Burnham, the media, frankly, you know, there's a lot of noises going on. It is down to Labour Party MPs who will make a call on the leader. And I think you're just seeing now the strength of feeling within the Parliamentary Labour Party to be driving forward that change that this country desperately needs. We're 18 months into it, and we're going to be pushing ahead with that programme to ensure that we've got this, that we're clearing up the mess the Conservatives left behind.
Moon, isn't the situation thus? The Labour Party needs to huddle together in the bunker, because if you all go up the ladder to face the electorate, you'll be wiped off the political landscape. You have to get behind your leader, because if you go to the electorate, it's game over. And if you put any of the other candidates to the electorate, such as Angela Rayner, who's still been investigated by HMRC, Wes Streeting, the party lurchers to the left, that wasn't the political mandate the Labour Party was elected on. Backing Sir Keir Starmer is survivalism.
I totally disagree with that. Look, we were given a mandate 18 months ago. Change is difficult, Martin. It's really difficult. And we are making those really important structural changes to our economy, to our energy policy, to migration. That is painful. It hurts. It takes a strong leader to be implementing that change. And that is Keir Starmer through and through.
And finally, obviously you're staying loyal to your boss, and I commend you on that, sir. But how long do you think this psychodrama can continue now? We've got a by-election in a couple of weeks. We've got the May elections that's expected to be apocalyptic for the Labour Party. How long can this charade carry on for?
We've got a mandate from the people, which we've got another 3 years of driving forward these changes. And at the next election, when it comes, people will decide whether the NHS is in a better state than it was when we inherited it 18 months ago, whether there is growth in the economy, whether people are feeling the benefit of interest rates falling, of their mortgages getting cheaper, and they can see the fact that we are closing asylum hotels, dealing with the immigration process. We are not going to throw that all away and start again. We are utterly focused day in, day out on delivering the change that our constituents, frankly, want us to deliver.
Thank you very much for joining us on the show today. I appreciate your time. That's Paramoon there, Labour Party MP. Quick reaction back here in the studio. Still delighted to be joined by the Shadow Secretary of State for Scotland, Andrew Bowie. Andrew, let's get your take. I wanted to ask you before we got into the Labour MP there. Surely now Anas Sarwar is the dead man walking. He went up the ladder first. Surely now he's out there in no man's land on his own, about to be taken down in a flail of lead.
Well, yeah, I'm not quite sure what happens with Anas Sarwar now. You've got the Secretary of State for Scotland, Douglas Alexander, and other prominent members of the Scottish Labour Party in Westminster saying that their leader, Anas Sarwar, has made a huge mistake here. Look, I do think the Prime Minister needs to be put out of his misery. I don't know what planet Perrin's on. I'm not quite sure the British public share his optimism about all the things that this Labour government are or aren't delivering. But the fact is that it does look like Anas Sarwar has made a catastrophic error of judgment in where many of his colleagues sat on this issue. As I said, it was a sign of desperation. He is quite clearly wanting to distance himself from this failing government in advance of the Scottish elections in May. But in doing so, he looks out of step, out of touch, and completely out of control of events.
Andrew Bowie, if you're a gambling man, when do you think this drama will end? Will it be 6 p.m. tonight? Will it be this week? Will it be the by-election later this month? Will it be May? How long can this drag on for? The electorate are just weary of all this, aren't they?
I don't know. I mean, look, these things have a habit of going on a lot longer than people in Westminster expect. But then when things do come to a crunch, things can happen very, very quickly. I don't get the sense it's going to happen this week. I think, unfortunately for the country, we're going to be stuck with Keir Starmer in Downing Street for a few months yet. But as I said, there's a very significant by-election taking place in a couple of weeks' time. You've got some horrendous-looking local government and national and regional elections in May. I don't know when the Prime Minister is going to leave office. I just hope it's soon for the country.
Sebastian Aside, let's get some reaction from you. You've been very patiently sitting there. Isn't the reality now is that, look at the data. Put your politics to one side, look at the data. We have the least popular Prime Minister in history. He's as unpopular as Liz Truss was after the mini budget. The Labour Party, its popularity is going downhill faster than the Great British team, bobsleigh team. Let's be absolutely frank. And the party is going downhill fast, but they can't implode because that would mean facing the electorate, facing the music. So they have to muddle on, even though the country can see this is a disaster.
Well, you can't argue with the data, but you can question it. And I think there's a mismatch here between expectations and perceived reality, in that when people voted for change, they hoped that change would come very quickly. Now, that is not realistic. That was never going to happen. And, I mean, I would urge people to buckle down, because turning a country around after 14 years is going to take 5 or 10 years. And we're only, 18 months, at least, if that, into the first term. Look, I'm even seeing Edwina Currie coming out, former Tory health minister, saying that Starmer should stay put. And she makes the same argument I do. She says the country needs stability, not a 5th PM in 4 years. And we can't risk turning into a beleaguered southern European country, because the pain for ordinary people is just too great.
Who ordered a curry? I mean, of all the random people to step in back to
Well, I welcome Edwina's contribution at any time on any issue, frankly.
Holy moly. With friends like that. But perhaps, actually, there's a point in that. Or the Conservative Party, and perhaps even Reform UK. By the way, their rally starts in about 5 or 6 minutes' time. Let's see if we can get to that. I wonder if actually the Conservatives and Reform would like Keir Starmer to stay in place. Is the easiest Labour person to beat, surely? Yeah, I mean, you'd have to ask Andrew about the Tories, but certainly for Reform, they're not ready to go to the country. They don't have candidates in place. They haven't been through the vetting. I don't know, they've talked about vetting, was it today? But that's a huge operation. And what we don't talk about enough is how much heritage and data and just a culture of people giving their entire lives to a party matters. But hang on a minute, they've had 14 years to practice for this. I'm talking about Reform. The Labour Party have had 14 years to practice for this, and look at the calamity we've got. Sure, but what I'm saying is, how can the new party be any worse? That's what the electorate are saying. Because there's so much that goes on behind the scenes of a party. You know, you were part of the Brexit Party when it was in a fetal state, and there's so much that they don't have even now. It's those decades of data. To one side in 6 weeks because people were sick to the back teeth of the political establishment that wouldn't do as they were told. Over Brexit, now it's over everything. All I'm saying is if we picked up the phone to Farage now and asked, would you like to go to the country right now, the answer, I think, would be no. He'd rather a bit of time to prepare. Well, we can ask about that in about 7 or 8 minutes' time when that conference starts. But Andrew Bowen, final words, you. In terms of that surprise, recommendation of Sir Keir Starmer by Edwina Currie, of all people, Kemi Badenoch is saying that Sir Keir Starmer's position is untenable. He has to go. But I wonder, actually, if he's almost like the 12th man on the bench for the Conservatives.
It's not for us to get rid of the Prime Minister. We've got it's for the Labour MPs to decide whether or not he carries on as Labour leader. I think for the good of the country, this Prime Minister needs to go. He's made catastrophic error after catastrophic error. This appointment of Peter Mandelson is just the latest in a long litany of disastrous decisions he's taken, which has led this country down the wrong path. And as in terms of whether the Conservative Party is ready for an election, we're ready for an election whenever an election is called. We've got a plan to get this country back on track. And I think when the people have to choose whether or not they want Nigel Farage, at the minute, Keir Starmer or Kemi Badenoch in Downing Street, they'll choose Kemi Badenoch because I think she's the only one with a serious plan for this country's future.
Let's just focus on Scotland again, because it's just fascinating what's happened. Anna Sarwar went up the ladder, said, Sir Keir Starmer's a friend, right? But by the way, he needs to do the right thing and to resign. They promised they were going to be different. He means Westminster, but it's not been good enough. My first priority and loyalty is to Scotland, but surely now he'll be chucked into the nearest lock.
Yeah, well, Keir will be thinking in Downing Street with friends like these, right? I mean, who needs enemies? It's quite incredible. Now, the electorate, the election of a Labour leader in Scotland is for Labour members in Scotland. But what's very interesting is the reaction of Labour members in Scotland who sit in the Houses of Parliament in Westminster. The Scottish Secretary, Ian Murray, who's a senior minister within the Labour government, senior Scottish Labour backbenchers who sit in the Whip's office, who have all come out in support of Keir Starmer since Annis's pronouncement. As I said, I think that the government should, the Labour Party should put this Prime Minister out of his misery. But what's quite clear is that Anna Sarwar has got no authority, even over his own MPs and his own party. He's completely out of touch and out of his depth, frankly, when it comes to dealing with the big issues facing him right now. So is he really the person that people in Scotland are going to entrust with their future company? I don't think so.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you're joining us on the show, a quick catch-up of where we are today. In around about an hour ago's time, an hour and a half ago now, Anna Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader, demanded the resignation of Sir Keir Starmer. All eyes then were on the Labour cabinet. The entire Labour Party cabinet in this past hour has come out in support of Sir Keir Starmer ahead of that crucial crunch meeting at 6 p.m. tonight. That now is the next hurdle in this political psychodrama. It's 4 p.m. and we've got the breaking news for you now. Keir Starmer is clinging on to power by his fingertips after the Scottish Labour leader declared open civil war. Around about 2:30 this afternoon, Anna Sarwar delivered a shattering blow to the PM's hopes of survival, insisting he must go after the ongoing Mandelson scandal.
The distraction needs to end and the leadership in Downing Street has to change. We cannot allow the failures at the heart of Downing Street to mean the failures continue here in Scotland.
So with just 2 hours to go now until that huge showdown in Parliament, all eyes are on what happens next. Can the Prime Minister survive the day, the week, the month, the year? Well, somebody who might have an inside notion on that is joining us now from Downing Street, and it's GBNews' political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, what an astonishing day in politics, and it's only 4 o'clock, and it's Monday. Bring us up to speed, if you can, for those tuning in into this incredible day of Labour civil war.
Well, it really is, Martin. It's worth just pausing for breath after an extraordinary time in British politics in the past 2 hours. Barely a day ago, we saw Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff, resign after being part of that decision to give Peter Mandelson the job of the UK ambassador to Washington. Fast forward to 10 a.m. this morning, the Prime Minister addressed his own staff. He said he wanted to carry on, deliver on the cost of living crisis, to help people, the country with security and be that voice for change. That was 10 a.m. 11 a.m. Tim Allen resigned. He's the Director of Communications. 11:30 a.m. we're told by the PM's spokesman that yes, the PM will survive the day. No, he won't resign. And yes, the Cabinet unanimously back the Prime Minister. So around 1:30 or 1 o'clock or so, it looked like maybe the PM had got away with this one, had got past the danger, and then something else happened. Up in Scotland at 2:30, Anna Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader, said it's time for change in number 10, and it was time, he said, for other members of the cabinet to find out what they would do to come to reconcile themselves with that decision he had taken. That prompted a flurry of busy-fingered cabinet ministers tweeting on their mobile phones over the next hour about how much they support Keir Starmer, and even cabinet ministers who we think want to replace Keir Starmer, Wes Streeting, of course, maybe Shabana Mahmood, Ed Miliband. They all said that Keir Starmer is the man to take them into the next general election, even those on the back benches who we think we would like to replace Keir Starmer, like Angela Rayner, who lost her job as deputy leader last September over tax affairs. She supported him, as did Lucy Powell, of course, the deputy leader of the party, who beat Bridget Phillipson back in September in that poll. So where are we now? Well, it's 4 p.m. The entire cabinet have now had to say in the past hour they support Sir Keir Starmer, who hasn't got a director of communications, hasn't got a chief of staff, just two people acting up into that role. And we're looking forward into a dramatic 2 hours in Westminster, because he squared his cabinet behind him. He's now got to convince his own backbenchers that he's the man who can take forward this party into both the local, the by-election in just over 2 weeks' time up in Greater Manchester, and after that the local elections in England and those crucial elections in Scotland and Wales. But guess what? He hasn't got the backing of the person fighting the most important of those elections, I think, because of the future of the Union, Anna Sarwar in Scotland. Who's going to win this one, Anna Sarwar or Sir Keir Starmer? And will Sir Keir Starmer be PM by the end of the week? We still don't know.
Well, Chris Hope, it's a fascinating political landscape when you look north of the border now, because some polling came out earlier last week from YouGov, and it has the Labour Party slipping behind Reform. The Labour Party is sinking like a stone north of the border, and we've been hearing from campaigners north of the border. They don't even want Keir Starmer to go to Scotland. Now, he's so toxic to the party. It's like, Starmer, stay away. So in terms of his own political survival, his own political aspirations, it would be advantageous, you could say, to keep Sir Keir Starmer out of Scotland. The problem is, surely you can't be the Scottish Labour leader when you've just thrown your Prime Minister overboard to the piranhas.
Well, that's right, but it may be in a kind of perverse way, disassociating himself from Sir Keir Starmer helps Anna Sarwar in Scotland, because if, as you say, and it is true in the polling, Keir Starmer is the most unpopular person, Prime Minister for many, many years. Maybe that's why he had to do it. I should say, in the midst of all this drama, while Anna Sarwar was speaking, David Lammy pulled up in his ministerial Range Rover and got out. And I don't know if we have the clip, we can play it now maybe. I said to him, is now the time for the Prime Minister to quit? And he said, in terms, we've waited 14 years to get here. No is the answer. And that answer I thought was so telling. To me, it said, here are some cabinet ministers who recognise if you replace Keir Starmer with an unelected replacement, the pressure will be on them to go to the country, have an election. And why would you go to have an election now when you're on 18 or 19 points in the polls and Reform UK are up on 28, 29 points? You might lose. So 14 years to fight over the future of Keir Starmer. So even in a sense, David Lammy was saying, don't risk it all by replacing Keir Starmer, because you don't know what's going to come next.
See there's some live pictures on the screens. The House of Commons, trundles on, looking about as energised and occupied as a Conference League, a non-league football match. The system of government rattles on while the true drama happens on outside at Downing Street. Unless we forget, Chris, we can also see on our screen there live pictures from Birmingham, because Reform UK have their annual rally there today. We're expecting perhaps to learn who the shadow cabinet of Reform could be, and we're expecting to hear a local elections campaign perhaps being launched, and we understand throwing open the candidacy lists to candidates for the general election. Politics carries on. Look at the difference there. Crisp packets swirling around chamber almost. It's empty. The real drama on the streets outside Reform UK, packed the NEC conference hall there. Chris Hope, looking ahead now to less than 2 hours' time, that meeting, do you think, we had Andrew Bowie, the Scottish First Minister for the Conservative Party, in the studio here. He thinks now that Keir Starmer has cleared the first hurdle of danger, at least for today.
Well, that's right. He has cleared that first hurdle. And it's worth just listening back to what David Lammy said, because it's clear that the Cabinet around the PM, I think, are concerned that if you do try and replace the PM with someone else, you have to have a general election before 2029. And they can't risk doing that because Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, he wants to select his candidates by the end of this year. He thinks there'll be a general election in May next year. Let's have a listen to what David Lammy told me for GBNews about an hour and a half ago. David Lammy, is it time for the PM to go?
We've waited 14 years to get here. No.
Why did Alan Sarwar, David Lammy? David Lammy there saying, no, we've waited 14 years in opposition. Why should we do this now? And that goes to the heart, I think, of what Labour's about, because the concern amongst many of those who think Keir Starmer isn't cutting it is that Labour is too content to be in opposition. They've got to fight to be in power, win the argument, frankly come on GBNews, a place where some of them are not comfortable, and talk to our voters, and that's how you win elections. And too many of the top team around Keir Starmer are not willing to do that. They don't recognise they've had 14 years in opposition, don't waste it all by replacing one man at the top. And also it's not clear who could replace him. So I think, yes, he's got past the first hurdle, which is his cabinet. He's got problems in Scotland, part of that for another day. Right now, Sir Keir Starmer is focusing entirely on somehow winning the day with the Parliamentary party. Anything can happen in that meeting. Back in January 2010, when there were concerns about Gordon Brown as leader, Martin, there was a show of hands of confidence in the Prime Minister. Could that happen?
Chris, just need to interject, because also on our screens now we can see the lights have been dimmed in Birmingham. That usually means that the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, will enter the arena. And Chris Hope, isn't that a metaphor for what represents the existential threat for the Labour Party of Reform UK? There's a reason, Chris, that the Labour Party don't want to put it to the people. There's a reason, perhaps, they must row behind Sir Keir Starmer, even though they know they're a sinking ship. Because even the replacements, potential replacements for Sir Keir Starmer, are poll after poll after poll predicted to lose their seats, all of the entire cabinet. Angela Rayner, the most likely successor, forecast to lose her seat. 91% likelihood. Ashton under Lyne will fall to Reform UK. All of them. The Prime Minister set to lose his seat to the Green Party. David Lammy to the Greens. Wes Streeting either to Reform or to the Independents, depending on your poll. It's a party in total disarray. Meanwhile, in Birmingham, the pyrotechnics, the fireworks, the dry ice, the flashing lights, the drama of Reform UK. And on stage now we have Nigel Farage entered the stage. Perhaps we can cross live now to the Reform UK rally at Birmingham. Perhaps expecting today big announcement of potential future cabinets. Who will be the Chancellor of the Exchequer for the party? Will it be Robert Jenrick? Will it be Richard Tice? Will it be Zia Youssef? We're expecting a raft of announcements today, and perhaps even some more defections, and no doubt huge reaction from that man there, Nigel Farage, to the psychodrama around the Labour Party. Let's tune in.
Well, here we are. Reform UK meeting in Birmingham. There's joy, there's optimism, there's humour, there's great belief that we can turn this country around. And yes, there are fireworks, and we enjoy ourselves. But spare a thought. No, please. Spare a thought for Downing Street this afternoon, where the curtains are drawn and the political life of the most unpopular and most useless Prime Minister in living memory is drawing to a close. The Mandelson saga tells you all that you need to know. Its depth, the numbers of people it involves, the sheer level of corruption is probably the biggest political scandal we've seen for 100 years, and it's not as if the PM wasn't warned. Everyone knew that the bloke was a wrong 'un. So McSweeney, in the short term, has carried the can. As you might have heard when you arrived, the Scottish leader, Anna Sarwar, has called on him to go. The cabinet are coming out one by one being loyal, because none of them want to appear to be the person that wields the knife. And he has to meet the backbench Labour Party at 6 p.m. this evening, where I expect the conversation will be of a rather franker nature. He won't be there for long. He'll be gone and replaced by somebody undoubtedly far worse. Far worse. It took the Conservatives 14 years, 14 long years of disaster to get into the mess they did, and this mob have managed it within a space of 18 months. I suppose you've got to admire it, really. But either way, what we do know is there is now a very clear dividing line in British politics. Keir Starmer says the country is not broken. Kemi Badenoch says the country is not broken. And we say, and 74% of the public agree with us in opinion polls, we say Britain is broken and Britain needs reform. And it doesn't matter where you look. It doesn't matter where you look. Just look at our public services. The NHS, just as one example. It's literally impossible for the NHS to cope with the level of population explosion that has happened in this country over the course of the last 20 years. And I can scarcely believe that now we are offshoring the NHS, outsourcing the NHS. You could get a telephone Zoom consultation from a doctor on a beach in Malaysia. Don't ever let the Labour Party say that Reform want to privatise the NHS whilst they're outsourcing the NHS, whilst at the same time putting a cap on the number of students who qualify as doctors and nurses every year. Complete and utter madness. And of course, our borders are completely broken. And this, I think, in many ways represents the greatest breach of trust between the governors and the governed. You think of it, the 2010 manifesto from the Conservatives, the 2015 manifesto from the Conservatives, the 2017 manifesto from the Conservatives, promising to reduce net migration to tens of thousands a year. And then in 2019, a Boris majority, Brexit done, every reason to believe we'd get a grip. And then we got the Boris wave with net up to 1 million people coming in a single year, most of whom are not bringing the kind of skills and support that our country needs. And frankly, whether it's immigration or anything else, the Conservatives were a disaster. They broke Britain, and all that Starmer and Labour are doing is making the situation worse. And the same comes for illegal immigration. Just think about it. How could it be in our interests to allow nearly 200,000 undocumented young males into our country? And that is what has happened under both the Conservatives and Labour, and now more people have arrived by boat under Starmer than did under any other Prime Minister. Our borders are broken. Our economy is broken. No one dares admit it. The national debt increased 2.5 times in 14 years of Conservatives and is now absolutely, totally out of control under what I think, despite the CV, oh no, she's got a good CV, that Rachel Reeves. 10 years, a senior economist at the Bank of England. Do you know what? She is the most useless Prime Minister in our history and an embarrassment to us on the world stage. She clearly hasn't got a clue what she's doing. As our debt explodes, as our welfare bill goes through the roof, business confidence sinks. And I particularly want to mention small business. There are 5.6 million men and women out there engaged in their own enterprises who frankly feel persecuted by both of the last two governments. And we are the party that's on the side of Alarm Clock Britain. We're on the party on the side of people who want to get up, run their businesses, have a go, and believe you me, I think those self-employed and small businesses will vote reform at the next election. Frankly, there is nobody else who even understands what they do, because almost no one in business has ever had a proper job, and that is going to change. We are deindustrializing at a rate of knots. Heavy manufacturing, heavy engineering, shipbuilding, cement making, chemicals, steel. You can go through the long list. It's all gone off to India and China. And then the very same goods are exported back here. And we're doing it in the name of net zero. We're doing it in the name of saving the planet, despite the fact the goods that are offshored are produced to lower environmental standards and then shipped all the way back. It's incredible. In 2010, we spent £6 billion importing energy from overseas. In 2024, we spent £36 billion importing energy from overseas. We are taxed at the highest level we've been since the war, and many, many people, not just the rich, but many bright, young, ambitious people are leaving our country in what is now approaching an exodus. Our economy is broken. And have a look at our politics. That is well and truly broken. Well, you can see how broken the Labour government is, but think of the 4 years of endless psychodrama the last Conservative government put us through. Too busy fighting each other to even consider standing up and fighting for the voters and the people of this country. We have a Prime Minister who is not a leader, and things are changing on both the centre-right and the centre-left. For all of our lifetimes, we've understood that there was a two-party system that led to government in Britain. And I can say today, for the first time, the two-party system we've known all of our lives is now over. It's gone. It's consigned to history. Reform has broken the mould of British politics. something Roy Jenkins tried to do 40 years ago and failed. We have broken the mould, and that's why we've led in the last 200 opinion polls. And I must tell you that I approach May the 7th and those elections in Scotland, in Wales, in all 32 London boroughs and thousands of seats up and down the country. I now approach May the 7th with a growing sense of optimism every single day. I really do. And so broken is our politics, they've even started cancelling elections. I thought only banana republics cancelled elections. Well, I will be in the High Court on the 19th and 20th of February when we fight the government at judicial review, not just for the elections this year, but to think that in the case of Norfolk, of Suffolk, of East and West Sussex, if this goes ahead, it will be the second year in a row that elections have been cancelled. We go into that court fight with every reason to think that we are going to upstage the establishment and that we are going to win and re-enfranchise 5 million people. Now, there is a number of people in those counties, particularly those for the second year in a row, have now started cancelling their direct debits and standing orders for their council tax. They're doing so on the basis of no taxation without representation. Now, of course, I could not possibly. None of us could we? Behave, Lee. We couldn't possibly support such action, but do you understand? I'm sure you'd feel the same way. We're going to do something about it. Now, if Sir Keir or whoever follows...
That's Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, speaking at the Reform rally at the NEC in Birmingham. We have to cross now to the Commons, where the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, is speaking.
Mr. Speaker, we have delivered on our manifesto promises to strengthen the role of the independent advisor, and we have set up the Ethics and Integrity Commission, whilst also publishing ministers' interests, gifts and hospitalities more frequently, and reforming severance payments to ensure that they are proportionate and fair. This is significant and important reform after years of repeated ethics scandals under the last administration. This includes restricting payments for ministers leaving office following a serious breach of the ministerial code, and requiring repayment of severance for those found to be in breach of the business appointment rules. Mr. Speaker, it's also why the government has introduced the Public Office Accountability Bill, a landmark piece of legislation to tackle injustice, so that when tragedy strikes, the state is called to account. In response to the latest revelations in the past week, the Prime Minister has confirmed that the government will bring forward legislation to ensure peerages can be removed from disgraced peers, and that Peter Mandelson will be removed from the list of Privy Councillors. And we are changing the process for the relevant direct ministerial appointments, including politically appointed diplomatic roles, so that in cases where the role requires access to highly classified material, the selected candidate must have passed through the requisite national security vetting process before such appointments are announced or confirmed. But, Mr. Speaker, we recognise we need to go further. We will work with the newly established Ethics and Integrity Commission to ensure that it achieves its aims of promoting the highest standards in public life. We will consider whether the current arrangements for the declaration and publication of financial interests for ministers and senior government officials are sufficient, and whether in the future regular published financial disclosure forms or other additional transparency measures should be used. We will look closely at our system for providing transparency around lobbying, and, Mr. Speaker, it is clear that we should consider again the use of non-corporate communications channels within government. Revelations from the Epstein files have shown that it has been far too easy to forward sensitive information via unofficial channels. There is a lack of clarity about the use of non-corporate communication channels within government, which has raised concerns about the security of official information. As members on the benches opposite know from their former ministers who also forwarded information from the government via private email accounts to people when they shouldn't. The government recognises the consistent cause for a strategic review of these channels, the role they play in government, the legal framework in which they sit, and whether the current codes of conduct and guidance relating to them are effective. Mr. Speaker, this work will focus on the issues for government, but will complement a range of work being carried out in both this House and in the other place. The government is committed to the principle that second jobs for members of Parliament should be banned outside of very limited exceptions, such as maintaining professional qualification. The Committee on Standards is currently conducting an inquiry into second jobs, and we are working with the committee to deliver meaningful change as quickly as possible. The House is considering the legislation currently before Parliament to introduce a duty of candour, and the Prime Minister has been clear that we will bring forward legislation to enable the removal of peerages from those who brought the House of Lords into disrepute. And Mr. Speaker, the government will ask the Lords Conduct Committee to expand its work reviewing the Code of Conduct in the other place to consider whether standards issues, including the rules relating to peers and lobbying, need to be reformed. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to provide the House with an update on the response to the humble address motion passed by the House last Wednesday. The government is committed to publishing all relevant documents in line with the motion agreed by the House and is working at pace to do so. As the House agreed on Wednesday, papers which the government believes should not be published on national security or international relations grounds will be referred to the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament. The Prime Minister wrote to the chair of the committee on Friday, acknowledging that it is important that documents are made available to Parliament as soon as possible. And as the Prime Minister has set out, the government is committed to being as transparent as soon as possible and in full compliance with the motion. The Prime Minister has asked the Cabinet Secretary to liaise with the Intelligence and Security Committee, and I will ensure that the House is kept updated on this work. Mr. Speaker, we have all been appalled at Jeffrey Epstein's disgusting crimes and Peter Mandelson's despicable behaviour. It is utterly contrary to what the Prime Minister stands for and the values at the heart of this government. We are resolute in our commitment to fighting men's violence against women and girls and supporting their victims. Delivering on this mission is a critical part of our response to the terrible misogyny at the heart of the Epstein scandal. We also recognise that Peter Mandelson's behaviour has posed difficult questions about our safeguards against corruption. I have set out today, Mr. Speaker, the steps the government is taking to ensure that the British public can have confidence in the integrity of public life, and I will continue to update the House, as I said last Monday and today, on these matters as our works develop. Mr. Speaker, I commend this statement to the House.
Shut up a minute. You can't have points of order and just beginning the debate. That's the rules of the House. I'm not going to change it, especially for you. Neil O'Brien, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for advance sight of his statement. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's authority is gone, and his government is starting to collapse. But the PM's decision to appoint Peter Mandelson raises massive questions about standards in public life, questions which the Minister's statement today just doesn't answer. Mr. Speaker, advisers advise, but ministers decide. And on that basis, can the Minister explain why it was right for Morgan McSweeney to resign, but not right for the Prime Minister to resign? Morgan McSweeney might have provided the advice, but it was the Prime Minister who made the decision to appoint the best friend of the world's most notorious paedophile to be His Majesty's ambassador in Washington. And the PM did this despite knowing that Mandelson had stayed in Epstein's house while he was in jail for child prostitution. The problem is not the structures or the processes. The information was there. The warnings were there. The problem is that the Prime Minister had all of that before him and yet chose to ignore it. He cannot keep blaming others. He cannot blame the process. He must start taking personal responsibility. For the record of this government on standards is truly extraordinary. First, the Prime Minister was embroiled in the freebies scandal. £107,000 in gifts given to him since 2019 and a personal donor being given a Downing Street pass. Then, the Prime Minister was reprimanded by his own ethics advisor over the appointment of a non-disclosed Labour donor to be the football regulator. His Transport Secretary, an ex-cop, had to resign over misleading the police. His anti-corruption minister had to resign over corruption. His homelessness minister had to resign for making people homeless. And then his deputy prime minister, housing minister, had to resign over a £40,000 unpaid tax bill on her house. No wonder even the leader of the Scottish Labour Party now says that the PM must go. Mr. Sarwar says, and I quote, "There have been too many mistakes and that he has no choice but to be honest about failure where I see it." He is right. Now let me turn to some specific questions. First, can the Minister confirm whether Peter Mandelson received a golden goodbye severance payment signed off by the government? Why has the government refused to answer this question since September? It's been reported that the golden goodbye was between £39,000 and £55,000, more than the average person earns in a year, Mr. Speaker. This is grotesque. And what steps is the government taking to retrieve this incredible payment for resigning in disgrace? It sounded from the Minister like he was saying he couldn't do it. I have to remind the Minister, at the moment at least, they are actually the government. They can take action. Second, will the government agree to a full investigation into Peter Mandelson's behaviour while he was our ambassador? On 27th of February, Mandelson arranged for the Prime Minister to meet Parliamentary, a client of Global Council, his own company. It was not recorded in the Prime Minister's register of meetings. It only emerged later. Parliamentary were then directly awarded a £240 million contract by the government. I make no criticism of Parliamentary. My point is simply, why wasn't it recorded? How many more such lobbyist meetings with the PM were there? And what other inside information was being shared? Will he agree, yes or no, to a full inquiry into Mandelson's time as our ambassador? Third, let me ask about another New Labour veteran put forward for a public office despite his known association with a paedophile. Number 10 have said that they investigated Matthew Doyle's relationship with a convicted paedophile, Sean Morton. Number 10 gave Doyle, the PM's former Director of Communications, a peerage after purportedly examining this matter. But they have never clarified whether their relationship continued after Morton's conviction. If Doyle cut ties with Morton upon his conviction, why doesn't the government just say so? So I asked the Chief Secretary to clarify this, and will he agree to publish all the documents relating to that appointment? Fourth, the Chief Secretary told the House on the 2nd of February that a review of the decision to appoint Mandelson was underway. What form will it take? Will the statement be laid before Parliament?
And hallelujah, let's get back to Birmingham and listen to Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, addressing the rally there.
Extreme teaching unions poisoning the minds of our kids. We've got to stop this happening. We will ensure there is a patriotic, balanced, historical agenda that our children learn. And we will also recognise that not everybody is fit to go to university to do an ology. That actually in the modern world of AI, people with trades and skills are not going to get replaced by computers. So from the age of 16, boys and girls should at school be able to start learning trades and skills that will last them for their entire lives. But we have to start making money. The country is going bust. We're caught in a trap where there are many at work who would actually be better off on welfare. And we will have to cut the welfare budget. Not everybody will like it, but, you know, I'm sorry, but mild anxiety, yeah? I mean, after a heavy night out, I have mild anxiety. Well, less so than before. But you can't go on the sick because you've got mild anxiety. But it is an attitudinal change that Britain needs. An attitudinal change to hard work rather than work-life balance. An attitudinal change to the idea of working from home. People aren't more productive working at home. It's a load of nonsense. They're more productive being with other fellow human beings and working as part of a team. I want us to be the champions of have a go Britain. People setting up businesses, people having a go. They may succeed, they may not, but many will, and I'm pleased that Kevin Byrne, who was the founder of checkertrade.com, is going to be our mentor in helping us produce the right policies for millions more men and women to set up their own businesses and have a chance to make a big success of their lives. And I'm proud that we're going to do that. But the Whitehall class don't get it. The Westminster class don't get it. They don't understand hard work. They don't understand business, and we do. And the same goes for tax. Why would you want all the richest people who pay the most amounts of tax to leave the country? Because if you do that, it means the taxes that everybody else has to pay, who's at work, go up. It is the economics of jealousy. It is the economics of small-mindedness. It is the economics of stupidity. And I want to reverse the exodus. I want the rich to come back and pay taxes here. I want to stop young 30-something ambitious people leaving our country. And tax is part of it, but it's not all of it. One of the other reasons people are leaving London in such numbers is because of the near collapse of law and order. And it isn't just London, is it? It's the same in all of our cities. And the academic experts will tell you that crime is falling. Is it hell? Whether it's phone thefts or frauds or sexual assaults or whatever it is, crime is getting worse. And that's why I'm very, very pleased that after all these years of Sadiq Khan, of London becoming lawless, the beginning with our campaign on the 7th of May in the 32 boroughs, but heading on to the London mayoral elections in a couple of years' time, our candidate is going to be vigilante mum Layla Cunningham to bring back law and order to London. And yes, we will control our borders. We will act in the national interest in terms of defence, in terms of waking up to the fact that our defences were shredded in 14 years of Conservative government, and despite all of Labour's promises, it isn't actually happening. And if we have to cut the welfare budget to make our defences stronger in a dangerous world, well then that is exactly what we are going to have to do. We can't defend ourselves right now. We need to be able to. Now, 20 months ago, I took a very big and life-changing decision. Having retired from politics, once we got Brexit over the line, I decided that I would come back into politics, and I did so because I believed that at that moment in time, I was the best person to lead the fight back against the shredding of all of the values and all of the good things that this country had stood for. I can't be bought. I can't be bullied. I've stood for the same principles for many, many decades. I'm not doing this for my health. There are many other things in life I could be doing. But 18 months on, I believe even more strongly that I am the right person at this moment in time to lead this vital and historic movement. And I won't get everything right, but I will always lead with courage. If you can survive the snakes in I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, you can survive pretty much anything. But of course, the criticism consistently has been, you're not ready for the election because you're a one-man band. Well, that is all changing, and it's changed rapidly. Whilst we've had in the existing team talent, hard work, ability and life experience, what we've lacked is experience in number 10. What we've lacked is experience in government. What we've lacked is long-term experience in Parliament. And that is why Nadine Dorries, Jake Berry, Nadeem Zahawi, Danny Kruger, Andrew Rosendahl, Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman are very welcome in our camp, and we're delighted to see many of you here today. And that complements enormously. That complements enormously what myself and David Bull, Zia Youssef, Richard Tice, Sarah Pochin, and of course, Lee Anderson have been doing already. Anyone from the outside can see we're now beginning to actually build a team of people. And I will also go on encouraging those from outside politics with expertise to join us. People like Colin Sutton, people like Vanessa Frake, and there are many, many more people out there who will answer the call because they realise just how much trouble our once great country is in. The May the 7th elections are crucial. They are our equivalent of the midterms. And I'm pleased that we've got the right leadership in Malcolm Offord in Scotland, Dan Thomas in Wales, and Leila Cunningham in London. We've got the right people. But I'm not going to wait until after May the 7th for the next phase, because things are moving rather quickly out there. I will, within the next few days, start to unveil the first people who will act as our spokesman and act as our shadow cabinet ministers. That is coming in just a few days' time and will represent yet more maturity for our party. And I'm looking forward to that, very, very much indeed. I said here in September that I thought the general election would happen in 2027. Well, of course, I was mocked and ridiculed. I'm always mocked and ridiculed. Well, I stand by that, but it could come more quickly. This whole thing could just unravel. Starmer goes, the party moves to the hard left, there's a further exodus of capital and people from the country, the bond markets lose confidence. I know Andy Burnham and the others say, we're not worried about the bond market. Well, you may not be worried about the bond market, but the bond market's worried about you. So as of 3 o'clock today, on our website, reformparty.uk, as of 3 o'clock today, I have opened the lists for people to apply to be general election candidates for this party. And I do today put this party on a general election war footing. We will make sure that when it comes, whenever it is, that we are ready in every way to fight and to win that election. And we're fighting because we believe that we want and need a proud, independent country that stands up on its own 2 feet, cherishes its past, but embraces its future. It's a place people want to come and live, a place people want to come and invest, a place where wealth and better living standards can be created. We have been totally failed by the two-party system, totally failed by career politicians. I am putting together a team of people who will do much, much better than that. And what I love about this party, about the events that we hold, is the optimism, the belief that we can do it. And you are our people's army. And without you, we can't do it. But I believe we can do it. Do you? I believe we can do it. Do you? Thank you very much indeed, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now, you're now all part of a very large press conference. So behave. First up is Catherine Forster from GBNews. I'm not sure that every media channel will quite get that round of applause, but anyway, Catherine, please.
Thank you, Catherine Forster, GBNews. Obviously, chaos in Downing Street, the Prime Minister's position very precarious. You've talked about the national interest. What do you think the Prime Minister should do in the national interest? Should he resign now or in the coming weeks? And when you said about something much worse could replace him, could you elaborate on that?
Yes. Look, if a Prime Minister loses credibility, can't command the House of Commons, can't command his own party, doesn't have respect internationally, then it's not in the national interest for him or her to stay. So I think that he should resign, and I think that he will, before very long, resign. I think Anna Sarwar is a very big marker. I mean, how can Labour now fight the Scottish elections if Starmer stays as Prime Minister? It's virtually impossible, isn't it? And the same, I think, will come for Wales very, very shortly. And there's supposed to be a meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party at 6 o'clock tonight, which could be very entertaining. When I say much worse, they'll go further to the left. The centre of gravity of the Labour Party is being dragged leftwards. It's being dragged leftwards by sectarian votes and fear of losing to more Gaza independence. It's being dragged leftwards by the advent of Zach Polanski. Some pretty crazy ideas, but that's where it's going. So I suspect that the next leader of the Labour Party will have even worse policies on tax, will drive the exodus of talent from the country, and I think things are going to get worse before they get better. But you know, maybe the truth is, if Starmer goes, maybe what the public really deserve is a general election, and that is what we'll push for. Okay, moving on. Any Price, BBC News. Honestly, I said behave. You haven't heard the question yet?
Actually, I didn't know I was getting one, Nigel, but so you think the general election could be far sooner rather than later? You're talking about announcing your shadow cabinet in the coming days. Are you really ready?
Well, you know, we're only really just, we've really only been properly in gear for the last 18, 20 months. What we've achieved in that short space of time is truly remarkable. But it's rather like building a company. The first 25% takes a long time, and then once you've got things moving, things slip into gear very quickly. I said a couple of weeks ago we were 50% prepared. I would argue within a month or 2 months, we will genuinely be ready. Certainly more ready than all of the others. And is it an enormous challenge? Yes. But we've managed to maintain a great sense of spirit, optimism, and team unity. We will be ready, and I'm not sure the general election will come voluntarily. I just think there is an outside possibility that over the summer months, there is some kind of economic market meltdown that brings an early election. So I'm still sticking with it's probably 27, But the chances of it being 26 have gone up considerably in the last 48 hours. Thank you. Sorry. Rob Mayer from BBC Midlands Today. Hello.
Hi, welcome again to the West Midlands. Rob Mayer, BBC Midlands Today. I mean, you had tremendous success in this part of the world at the local elections in May last year. Your key promises were to reduce waste and cut tax. So what do you say to voters who might be feeling let down in places like Staffordshire, Warwickshire, where council tax is going up, and in Worcestershire, where one of your councillors, David Taylor, actually resigned over the weekend over plans to raise council tax by nearly 10%?
Well, Worcestershire's a total basket case. You know that. I know that. It's on the edge of bankruptcy. We are not in majority control in Worcestershire, so I take that out of the equation. But if we want to talk about Staffordshire, want to talk about Warwickshire, first point, never once did I say we'd cut council tax. Never once. Never once in the campaign did I say we'd do that, because I knew it would be impossible given how tough the finances were. What we said is we would find waste and save money. And across our councils, we've made about £300 million in savings thus far. Our council tax increases in the councils we control are lower than the council tax increases for the other parties in the rest of the country. So I would say to you, we're not off to a bad start. OK, Lewis Warner, ITV News Central.
Thank you. I'd like to ask, you said you're on a general election war footing. If the Prime Minister does resign in the coming days, would you call on that next Labour leader to call a general election? Are you ready for that? And if so, why should they? Because some of the MPs sitting opposite here didn't call a by-election when they defected.
No, they didn't. You're right. And of the last 200 and something MP defections, only 2 have ever occasioned by-elections. I just think legitimacy of Prime Ministers. We've had so many Prime Ministers now. Where is the legitimacy of a Prime Minister who's not been approved by the people? And I think the office of Prime Minister is being rapidly devalued. Yes, I accept it's the Conservative Party that did that. I mean, it was hard to keep up at times, wasn't it, how many there were? But no, I think there will be a big call in the country for a general election. They may well ignore it, and they probably will ignore it, as I said earlier, but do not underestimate financial events spiralling out of control if they go for a leader that is on the hard left of British economics. So I still think it may happen. I doubt they will offer it to us, sadly. Sophie Church, Daily Mail.
Thanks, Nigel. So if you are to succeed at the next general election, how will you host sensible, productive conversations with the civil service, given you've said you'll slash numbers, and in response, civil servants have said they'll revolt?
Well, we've had civil servants saying that they're suffering through emotional trauma at the prospects of a reform government. Well, that sounds like the first cost cuttings are going to be quite easy, doesn't it, really? I do not have direct experience of working with the civil service. Richard Tice and I have not been in that position before. But we've spoken to enough people who tell us there are many good people in the civil service who want to do their best. And what we have to do is find out who are the good ones and keep them. And with the advent of AI, I promise you, with the advent of AI, there are going to be a lot of job losses in the civil service anyway. What we cannot have is an obstructive civil service that willfully try to prevent the manifesto of a government being put through. And to a very large extent, that is what Danny Kruger has come into the party to do, to prepare us for government, to work out what executive powers we do have or don't have, and make sure we make the right choices. I mean, it's the same with the House of Lords. That's another potential obstruction to what we need to do. So I understand the question, we are thinking about it, and we are working on it. Geneviève from the Daily Telegraph.
Hi, Nigel. You say that you want to put experts from outside of politics onto your front bench, and you'll be announcing names within the next few days. But how would you do this if you were to get into power? Would you use the House of Lords and appoint them peerages in order to get them into those positions? And previously, you said that you want to abolish the House of Lords. Is that still your position?
Well, the House of Lords as it currently exists is an absolute monstrosity. Absolute monstrosity. I mean, filled up with hundreds of Tony Blair's mates and David Cameron's mates, most of whom live within the same 2 postcodes in West London. I mean, it's a nonsense. No, radical change to the House of Lords. Look, if you appoint people from outside, you've got 2 options. If they're not in Parliament, one is, yes, the traditional route, you put them in the House of Lords. A better route, in my opinion, is to make the committees that meet in the House of Commons more powerful, to give them legal force, so that ministers can genuinely be held to account. And that, to me, would be a far better system. It really, really would. Sophie from the Daily Mirror.
Hi, thanks, Nigel. So last year, one of your new MPs, Robert Jenrick, complained about visiting Handsworth in Birmingham, where he said he didn't see another white face when he was speaking about integration. Do you think the best way to assess whether an area is integrated is by the number of white people in it? Thank you.
No, it's by, do people speak the same language? Do kids play together in the street? Is there a sense of commonality, and is there a sense of community? And I think there is a feeling in too many areas of excessive levels of immigration, regardless of geography, ethnicity. Actually, we finished up with desperately divided societies, and that's a fault of irresponsible immigration policies. Simple as that. Right, now, can I ask Richard and the other MPs to join me, please, now on the stage? Now, gather in quite tight. No one too near the edges. We come forward. Come in.
Here we go. Right. Lee, you just come in this side next to Nigel. Yeah. Right there.
Lee was hiding, I can't believe it. On behalf of all of us, massive thanks for you turning out on a Monday afternoon in such numbers. Massive thanks for your enthusiasm, your optimism, your energy. I know many of you are going to be engaged in these elections coming up. There's one coming up later on this month, a load more coming up on the 7th of May. And what you see before you is a growing parliamentary team, a team that now has more depth and breadth and experience than it had before, and a team that before long will be very much bigger. Thank you, everybody. It's all right.
And welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. It's just 1 minute past 5 p.m. on this happy Monday afternoon. You're seeing live pictures on your screen there. That is the Reform UK rally in Birmingham at the NEC Centre. 8 MPs there. Suella Braverman, Robert Jenrick, Richard Tice, Nigel Farage, Lee Anderson, firing turquoise balls into the crowd. Lee Anderson's got his balls. I've stopped there. Andrew Rosendale, that's the Romford MP, Sarah Pochin and Danny Kruger firing foam balls into the crowd. with all the hallmarks of what would normally would be some sort of rock and roll gig at the NEC Centre there in Birmingham. I'm delighted to be joined in my studio by Lord Steve McCabe, the Labour peer, former MP, and also Peter Edwards, the former editor of Labour List. Just getting some immediate reaction to that. So you gentlemen sat through that rally there in Birmingham. And Lord Steve McCabe, first of all, you were very much taken by the fact there is the door of Downing Street there. Around about an hour's time now, we're expecting this meeting between Sir Keir Starmer and his MPs. We understand all of the Labour cabinet has now come out in support behind the Prime Minister after that dramatic intervention around about 2:30 this afternoon. The Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar demanding the Prime Minister resign. Turned out to be a very, very solitary figure. Lord Steve McCabe, let's bring you in now. Quick reaction, if we could, to what's happened just in Birmingham there. You were struck, if anything, by the presentation, the drama, the kind of rock and roll nature of Reform UK's presentation.
Yeah, I think it's good television. It's great. It's a great rah-rah rally. I mean, I think he is kind of speaking to the converted. I mean, his audience is, very much him. And it was interesting when he got his 8 MPs up on stage, 50% of them are Tories. So,
Just to interject there, we are showing these pictures of the door of Downing Street. I've just been told we are expecting Sir Keir Starmer to come out any moment now and address the nation. We don't know in what capacity that's going to be. We don't know if it's a short statement to the press. I've literally just been told Keir Starmer is coming out of that door to give some form of statement sometime soon. Now, we did know earlier on that at 6 p.m. there'd be a meeting between Keir Starmer and his ministers in there. A huge amount has happened in these past few hours. Lord Steve McCabe, if I could get back now to the psychodrama, let's be frank, the implosion almost of the Labour Party. A dramatic moment, this Keir Starmer might be addressing the nation. What on earth do you think we could expect?
Well, I think it's hard to guess. I mean, I think he was scheduled to make some sort of speech at some point today. I think that was always in the offing, although I wasn't aware it was going to be something external to Downing Street.
I've just been told, actually, we're not expecting a full address to the nation, but Sir Keir Starmer is going to come out and talk to the press. Obviously, this information is coming in to me in real time. But Lord Steve McCabe, we have a precipitous situation now for the Prime Minister. Over the weekend, the drama of throwing a couple of bodies under the bus, Morgan McSweeney, then his Director of Communications, to try and feed the sharks, as it were, to get them off the scent of Sir Keir Starmer. Earlier on today, 2:30, Anna Sarwar. What's your thoughts on him demanding that Sir Keir Starmer stood down, now cutting a lonely figure almost in no man's land on his own?
Well, I think it was a mistake for Anna's. And, he may well live to regret it. I don't think it will do anything good for his efforts in the Scottish elections. In fact, it might even make things worse for him there.
Peter Edwards, the situation is precipitous, it's perilous. I mean, it's just chaos in the heart of Downing Street now. We were promised change, change from the psychodrama, the sleaze, the corruption, the chaos, fixing the foundations of British politics. The foundations have been blown apart. It's been utter bedlam.
Labour have delivered on a lot on policy, a lot of things I happen to agree with, stuff on the living wage, on setting up an energy company, on rail nationalisation and so on and so on. But the last week has been a total mess, and that's absolutely undeniable. I couldn't keep a straight face and say otherwise. I really hope the Prime Minister stays on. He has been weakened, clearly by the appointment of Lord Mallison. He did the right thing. Remember, he spent many years prosecuting men who carried out sexual offences against women and girls when he was head of the CPS. He did the right thing to issue an apology last week, particularly keeping in mind the victims of Jeffrey Epstein's wicked crimes. The resignations we've seen in the last 48 hours or so of key advisers, what I'd say is they have happened to other Prime Ministers, and other Prime Ministers have carried on. Everyone said 20 years ago, how could Blair survive without Alistair Campbell? But he did.
Let's get straight now to our man Chris Hope, who is live there for us now. Oh, is at Westminster. Chris Hope in Westminster. Chris, we have pictures there of the door at Downing Street, and obviously now people think, oh wow, what's going to happen? Keir Starmer expected to emerge, but he's not addressing the nation. What's happening? Because of course, anytime we see that door, we're expecting the Prime Minister to come out and do, well, God knows what. What's the latest?
But we don't think he's addressing the nation. He should be getting into a car to drive to Parliament, where I'm standing now in the ancient Westminster Hall, where he's addressing MPs for the mass meeting of the MPs at 6 p.m. And with me now is Ian Murray. He's a senior minister in the Culture Office and also a former Scottish Secretary. Ian Murray, what do you want to hear from Keir Starmer tonight at 6 p.m?
Well, a reaffirmation of the good things that this government to do, and to get us all to work as one team to try and deliver those. The public will be watching all of this psychodrama and shaking their head and saying, not again, why are we doing this again, in terms of the instability here at Downing Street. We got a big mandate in 2024 to deliver change for the country. The Prime Minister deserves the time to be able to see that through, and everyone, the PLP and everyone, should be behind him and willing him on to make sure we can see that through.
So what on earth is Anna Sarwar saying it's time for a change at 2:30 p.m, prompting yourself and other ministers to put out messages on social media supporting the PM?
Well, I just don't think that that's the right approach. We've had so many Prime Ministers, more than hot dinners, some would say, in the last 15 years. We won a stonking mandate in 2024 on the basis of the chaos that the previous Conservative government had given us, and we were given that mandate in order to try and improve things. Our public services were on their knees, our economy was on its knees. It's taken time to turn that around. Everyone has said we're as impatient as the public are to deliver that change. Of course we are, but we want to deliver it quicker and we want to go deeper and faster. We keep saying we want to do that, and it's been difficult. Of course it's been difficult. Government is difficult, particularly with the set of circumstances that we appear to be in with the economy and indeed with our public services. But 2026 should be the year of delivery. The Prime Minister has said that. Let's give him the opportunity to deliver that. Look, we have elections every 4 or 5 years in this country. If the public don't like what's been done over the previous 4 or 5 years, they can vote you out, as we've seen with Rishi Sunak in 2024. Let's give the Prime Minister the chance. He's earned that chance, and he should be able to see that through.
Wasn't Anna Sarwar, though, cutting Keir Starmer loose, knowing he's a vote loser according to the polls? He's a negative on support. Let's kind of cut Keir Starmer loose and try and beat Reform and the SNP in Scotland. Is that not the thinking of Anna Sarwar?
But the Scottish voters have to realise that they're electing a Scottish government here. Do they really want to risk another third decade of the SNP in terms of demolishing public services, in terms of their dreadful record on the economy, in terms of the sleaze and everything else that's been going on over in Scotland over the last best part of 2 decades? Are we also give them a third decade on the basis of people thinking that change isn't quick enough here at Westminster? The point that Anas should have been making, and he's made already about his New Year's speech, is that we need to be concentrating on the issues in Scotland to make sure we change the government and put Anas Sarwar as the First Minister. I'll be working my fingers to the bone to do that, as Anas worked his fingers to the bone to put Keir Starmer in as Prime Minister. That's what we should be doing together as a team.
Surely Anna Sarwar can't fight the election as your leader in Scotland, given he wants Keir Starmer, the top man, to leave his job.
Well, that's a question for him to answer, not for me, but my plea to everyone.
What do you think?
Well, my plea to everyone is we should be working as one team. We're successful when we work together, but we put that message to the doorsteps. And the last thing the public need, the families who can't afford to put food on the table for their children, the people who are worried about the education system, long waiting lists in the NHS in Scotland, the economy teetering and people not seeing the value of that, all of that in the Scottish context doesn't go away unless you vote for Anas Sarwar at the election, and that's what we should be concentrating on.
In terms of Sir Keir Starmer, where are we with him now? If he gets past tonight's meeting with your colleagues on the backbenches, the entire party, will he then take your party into the May local elections?
Well, look, I've worked very closely with Keir over the last 5 years since he became leader of the Labour Party. He gets up every single day to try and make this country better. Governing is hard, and the circumstances we inherited made it even harder, but we're trying to improve things as quickly as we possibly can. I want him to go to the PLP tonight, speak to Labour MPs and be himself, because when he's passionate, when he's dedicated, when he's concentrating on the issues, when he's talking about the country and not the party, that's something he's most authentic. That's the person that has integrity. Let's give him, he deserves the opportunity to be able to see that through.
And just finally, Ian Murray, isn't your problem that Nigel Farage, he's given a rally in Birmingham today, hasn't he got all the answers? He's miles ahead in the polls, people seem to like him, he's popular. That's a problem.
Nigel Farage doesn't even understand the questions, let alone have the answers. And that's what we're fighting for here as a Labour Party, for a decent society that has decent public services, that people can see hope and careers for the future, that they can look after their families and have the next generation doing better than them. That's what we're fighting for here. And Nigel Farage has none of the answers because he doesn't even understand the questions, and people should not be fooled.
Ian Murray, thank you for joining us. Ian Murray there, setting out what he thinks has to happen today when Sir Keir Starmer addresses the backbench Labour Party a few hundred feet from where I'm standing at the moment. And also questions there for Anas Sarwar. How can he really fight the Scottish elections in May when he doesn't want PM as his leader?
Okay, thank you very much there, Chris Hope. Less than 50 minutes to go now until that crunch meeting between the Prime Minister Keir Starmer and his MPs. The door of Downing Street there keeps swinging open. We're expecting the Prime Minister Keir Starmer to emerge any moment now to get into a vehicle and make that short trip across the road to face the music, to face his parliamentarians, perhaps to face his destiny. What's going to happen in the next hour? I know Chris Hope will be there for us throughout the rest of the afternoon and after that meeting. Don't go anywhere. GBNews will be locked into this before, during and after an extraordinary day in the Prime Minister's destiny. I'm still joined in the studio by the Labour member of the House of Lords, Lord Steve McCabe, and also the editor of the Labour list, Peter Edwards, looking on expectantly. Lord McCabe, let's start with you. You've been in politics a long time. The days of Tony Blair, when Labour seemed unassailable in their lead. But even by your long tooth, your long experience, this, you have to admit, is utter chaos. It's bedlam at the heart of the Labour Party.
Well, I think there's a small number of people within the Labour Party are causing a great deal of difficulty, and if they would calm down and put the country's interests first, we would all be in a better position. I agree it's given the total impression at the moment that there is chaos, but I don't think the vast majority of people are doing this. I think this has actually been driven by a small number of people, either through misjudgment or through maliciousness.
Is it not being driven by a huge number of people? The British electorate. The British electorate have seen what the Labour Party has done in 18 months. Most things are measurably worse. The economy, unemployment, inflation. You know, there's a feeling that Westminster, actually irrespective of political stripes, simply doesn't listen to what the electorate tell them to do. They seem to live in a parallel universe, and the age-old problems that haunted the Conservatives, sleaze, money, power, corruption, it's the same old story.
Well, I don't think that is true at all, Martin. I mean, actually, people, if you look at the rise in the minimum wage, if you look at the increase in pensions, people are, if you look at the return on the electricity cuts for people, if you look at the freeze on...
Nobody's talking about any of that, Steve.
People are actually in their pockets.
Nobody's talking about it. They're talking about the chaos, the implosion, the drama, the nonsense, the guff, the hypocrisy, the corruption, the sleaze, the money. It's the same old story.
We're talking about a relatively small number of people who are engaged in the sleaze and in the problems, and they are damaging the party and the long
promised change
for the country. And
he promised an end to it.
And I'm telling
it's
you
got
that
worse, Steve.
Well, I'm telling you, in terms of people's overall lives and the direction of travel, things are actually getting better. And if the people who are causing so much trouble in the party would just sit back and shut up for a while, we'd be able to get on with the job, and people would begin to see the things that I'm telling you are actually happening.
Is that the point there then, Peter Edwards? You know, there's no drama, there's no problem, minimum wage, trains have been nationalised, there's nothing to see here. Come on.
We've always got to look reality in the face, and if a relationship is going wrong, it always involves a bit of honesty among the party. Clearly, there are dozens, not hundreds, but dozens of MPs, primarily on the backbench, who are totally cheesed off with Starmer. But as Steve said, Labour have had a number of policy successes, and they're not really getting those across, from rail nationalisation, setting up the energy company, pay is rising, the economy is growing, interest rates have been cut, and NHS waiting lists are coming down. But we need to, even before the Mandelson crisis, we need to articulate this better.
OK, gentlemen, thank you very much. I need to cut straight now to Birmingham, and I'm joined by the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, who joins us after the Birmingham rally with Reform UK. Nigel Farage, welcome to the show on GB News. Also on the screen now, we have a picture of the door of Downing Street. Any moment now, Nigel Farage, we're expecting Sir Keir Starmer to emerge before he goes to face his MPs in Parliament. What would your message be to Sir Keir Starmer today?
It's over. It's done. The game's up, mate. Time you recognised it. I mean, look, how on earth can the Scottish parliamentary elections go ahead when you've got the leader of the Scottish party saying he doesn't support the national leader? That to me is the straw that does actually break the camel's back, and it's just now simply a matter of time. He's lost legitimacy, he's lost authority, events have moved way beyond his control, and I'm afraid it's all down to his own grievous misjudgment. But remember, even before the Mandelson case, he was already the most unpopular Prime Minister in living memory. Anna Sarwar in Scotland has come out and said, we don't want him as leader. It's not even tenable that those elections go ahead with Starmer as leader.
Is the truth of the matter, Anna Sarwar perhaps expected some of the ministers to fall into line behind him. Instead, he's gone up the ladder in the trenches. He's now on his own. Surely he's going to be cut down in a flail of lead.
Well, we'll see what happens at 6 o'clock. You know, at 6 o'clock, you may well find backbenchers speaking rather more frankly than cabinet ministers who, whatever they think in their hearts, do not want to appear in the history books as the man or woman that held the dagger. I would suggest to you it's much more likely that that is what's going on.
And we've seen so far, at least on social media, a unified backing of the Prime Minister. Of course, that's one thing to do that on social media. It's quite another to do that in private. Do you think the truth of the matter is the Labour cabinet will have to back their Prime Minister? Because if they go to the country, if they face the music, they'll be obliterated.
Well, look, you know, for now the Labour cabinet can back the Prime Minister. It looks more and more likely that in their sixth safest parliamentary seat of Gorton and Denton, that maybe the voters won't back them there. The May the 7th catastrophe that was Wales could now extend to Scotland as well. And ultimately, this will be about not whether cabinet colleagues rally round, it'll be about how many backbenchers speak out at 6 o'clock tonight and in the days to come. I do not believe there is any possible way he can survive this for very long.
And Nigel Farage, the names being touted as potential replacements for Sir Keir Starmer, do you think they're going to make the country better or worse?
Oh, worse. I think what comes next will be even worse. The Labour Party will move to the left. They'll put taxes up. More entrepreneurs will leave. Less foreign direct investment will come in. There could even be a run on the bond markets. And I've always said, Martin, that I thought a general election would come in 2027. I think there's a chance it could come at some point this year now.
And are you thinking that may happen because if the country tacks to the left and the external world gets a notion that we're becoming more, I don't know, of an economic basket case like France, there's going to be a shock to the system?
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, if the markets take the view that the UK economy is in a doom loop and that we've gone even further to the left in terms of our economics, then frankly anything could happen. And when markets, you know, we saw this back in 2008 with the great financial crash. When markets turn, they can turn very quickly. I'm not saying that it will happen, but what I am saying is the possibility of that happening will be all the greater if you finish up with a Rayner-type figure as Prime Minister.
And of course, your critics, Nigel Farage, would say if there is a general election called, you won't be ready. There aren't enough candidates. You have 8 MPs on the board there today, but they'll all be saying, no, things have been much, much worse under a reform government because you have no experience of governing.
Well, look, you know, we've taken in a handful of people in recent times who've been cabinet ministers. We now have people at up the upper echelons of our party, who've been in number 10, who've been in government, who know what they're doing, and I think you'll see we're building a team. I'll be announcing shadow cabinet positions over the course of the next few days, and we will be ready. If the election's in 2 months' time, we will be ready.
And you said today that at 3 p.m. your application list to become a potential candidate for Reform UK is open. A lot of people will, of course, be saying that's a huge amount of vetting that needs to be done. Are you confident that we won't see any repetition of a few, how should you put it, fruity candidates being on the list?
Well, look, I mean, what happened at the last general election was a disaster, but it was very much more an amateur party in those days. We will be ready, we will vet them, and I think you're going to find some very high-quality people who've never been in politics before, who've got real experience of the world and perhaps been successful as well, will want to stand for our lists. You know, I know that that is going to happen.
Nigel Farage, we seem to be reaching a consensus now. Even the supportive media, the BBC, ITV News and others seem to be reaching a consensus. We are now approaching the final days of Sir Keir Starmer. We don't know how long that might take, but when we look back on Starmerism, how do you think it'll be remembered?
It'll be remembered as a loveless victory in a general election that predominantly happened because of people's disgust at the Conservative Party, and that it was a premiership with no goals. There was never a mountain, you know, in the distance to climb. There was never any clear direction of travel, other than words like change that were trotted out. Much of what he did wasn't even in the manifesto, and because there was no driving mission, events forced him to U-turn again and again and again. A rudderless prime ministership led by a man who, whatever his talents may well have been as a lawyer, is frankly just not a leader.
If you're a gambling man, Nigel Farage, when do you think that the axe will fall? When do you think Keir Starmer's going to be gone?
If I was a gambling man, Martin, you know I'm a gambling man. I think he'll be gone before the end of the month. That is my view.
The end of the month. And then what? Then there's going to be a leadership challenge. And, I mean, what would the country look like under Angela Rayner?
Well, you know, Rayner, I mean, I guess the asset she has is personality, which is sadly lacking in most of the Labour Party, who are pretty lifeless. But you know where she stands, and she'll take us down the route of definitions of Islamophobia, of workers' rights to the level where small companies just don't want to employ anybody, and high taxes and possibly even wealth taxes. That is where we'd go under a Rayner premiership.
Nigel Farage, of course, you're in Birmingham today, and the local elections are launching in May. That's why you're getting together there. I wanted to ask you for your comment on a story we've been covering here a lot on GBNews, and that is of a previously convicted terrorist standing as an independent candidate in the Sparkhill region of Birmingham. Some people think it's an extraordinary situation that that's even allowed to happen in this country.
Well, you've got a convicted terrorist standing in Birmingham. You've got sectarian politics now alive and well in Birmingham. A Birmingham police department who acted against the Israeli fans simply because they were Jews. You've got two-tier justice in Birmingham, two-tier policing in Birmingham. The bins are overflowing. The council's bankrupt. If you want to find out what broken Britain is, just come to Birmingham.
Nigel Farage, what would your message be to Birmingham in particular? Because I'm here with Lord Steve McCabe, and he said it's a canny place to launch because Birmingham traditionally hasn't been a sort of particularly rich ground for your type of politics, but the country seems to be switching to the left, the Labour Party vote being cleaved, and you see an opportunity for Reform UK to be able to win in that area.
I genuinely think we've got a slightly better than 50% chance of winning in Birmingham. And boy, you know, if we do, it'll be a very, very, very steep learning curve and a hell of a lot to do. But I think people in Birmingham are desperate for something different, because what we've got just doesn't work. And what we've got to do is put before the people of Birmingham competent candidates, people with experience, people who can get hold of a budget and actually run things. I think we've got a better than 50% chance of winning in this city. I really do.
I know you've delayed the unveiling, the revealing, if you like, of your shadow cabinet in waiting until next Monday. We were rather excited that might be today, but I guess you're keeping us waiting. But I want to ask you about the fact, Nigel, that there are three people who would like to be the Chancellor to get the top job. The new boy, Robert Jenrick, of course, your loyal deputy, Richard Tice, and Zia Yousaf as well would like a nibble at that post. That's a lot of competition. How are you going to cope with three big names wanting one job?
Well, you're jolly fortunate, Martin, because you know far more than I do about the people inside the party and what they want to do. I haven't delayed anything. I haven't promised anything for next Monday. I said over the course of the coming days, I will start to unveil the shadow cabinet. Simple as. Yeah.
Joining us live from
that's
Birmingham
where we
East.
are. You'll have to wait and find out.
Thank you very much, Nigel Farage, for joining us.
Cheers.
OK, let's get back to... Yeah, let's get back to the studio here in Westminster. Nigel Farage, thank you there for pulling your earpiece out. Lord Steve McCabe, you listened in there, Nigel Farage, parking the tanks, as you said, on the lawns there in Birmingham. And look, isn't this an interesting point? How ordinarily... it's not a place where Reform UK are expected to do well. Inner cities, ethnic minority centres, a lot of seats there that are going to Gaza independence, a lot of seats that have been traditionally Labour might go to the Green Party. But we are seeing a huge demographic change in city centres and the traditional working class Labour Party vote being eviscerated. Are we seeing here in real time, aside from the psychodrama in Downing Street, a complete reset of British politics, and that's bad news for the Labour Party?
Well, I think it's absolutely true. We're way beyond the two-party system now. I think we're seeing, much more fracturing. The days of those big safe seats that you could predict would go one way or the other, I think that's absolutely gone. It will be very interesting to see how Reform do in a place like Birmingham. But, I mean, you have to remember, Birmingham's a pretty diverse city in lots of respects, and although people often think of it as a Labour city...
Here we go, live pictures now. That is Keir Starmer. Just a few moments ago, actually, Keir Starmer coming out of Downing Street. Of course, he gets into a vehicle. It's only a short walk over to... OK, Steve McCabe, let's get back to you. We were talking about the changing aspect of British voters. But look, let's, if we could, get back to what's going to go on in Parliament tonight. You know, Keir Starmer, we're expecting any moment to go into Parliament. You've been in many, many of these meetings over the years. You've seen political drama, knife edge, all of it. This is off the scale. But by what you're used to, this surely must rate as a new high and utter chaos, especially so soon into a new government.
Well, I think this will undoubtedly be a tense meeting and the Prime Minister will need to actually set out his stall and convince people. But, my own hunch is that the vast majority of people in that meeting will throw their weight behind him.
OK, thank you for that. Let's stick with us because we're just getting some breaking news here. Well, fresh comment. The Deputy Labour Party leader, Lucy Powell, she has shown her support for the Prime Minister. It took a while, but let's listen into what she said earlier.
What people should understand about Keir is that he withstands pressure really well. In fact, he sort of thrives off pressure, and he wants people to understand that he is so sorry about what happened with Peter Mandelson. Sorry to the victims. It was a mistake, and he's said that, and he's apologised for it. But he also wants to show people that he gets it, and he understands the changes that need to follow from that, and so that people see that we understand it.
Lucy Powell there giving full support to Sir Keir Starmer. But it does seem to be the case these days that giving your full support to somebody in the Labour Party generally means within a few days they're off the edge of the top of the bus. Now, don't forget, Sir Keir Starmer gave his full support to Morgan McSweeney at PMQs last week. He's gone off the top of the bus. Sir Keir Starmer gave his full support to Angela Rayner shortly before she went off the top of the Labour Party bus. Getting the seal of approval from people in the Labour Party at the moment, Steve McCabe, seems to be the kiss of death.
Well, yes, but I think what you're seeing here is that you've got virtually the whole of the cabinet now, I think, have actually come out and backed the Prime Minister, because they know perfectly well that if you want to destabilise the economy, if you want to destabilise the country, and if you want to create chaos, then the best thing you can do at the moment is get rid of Keir Starmer. That will be the effect of it. People have just spent too much time thinking you can change the Prime Minister every few months. If they think back, the consequence of all those prime ministerial changes we saw under the last government was they created chaos. They didn't bring stability. And removing Keir Starmer at the moment will not help the task that the British people want tackled, and that's about public services and the economy.
You mentioned chaos. This is chaos. Steve McCabe, we are experiencing a government defined by chaos almost from the first week. In the aftermath of the Southport riots, Sir Keir Starmer, I think, was utterly tone-deaf and tin-eared. He called the British public far right. He never recovered from that, with a great tranche of the electorate who said, no, we're not far right. We're sick of children being murdered by psychopaths. It was a wrong call. There was the Free Gear Keir scandal. Freebies from Lord Alley right from the start. Ticket to see Taylor Swift. Exactly the kind of sleaze that we expected from the Conservative Party. 2 chiefs of staff, 4 directors of communication, 11 ministers, including a deputy prime minister, still being investigated over a 40 grand council stamp duty fiasco, a corruption minister who quit over corruption, a homeless minister who quit because they're accused of being a dodgy landlord, a transport minister who quit over fraud, a fraud charge. This is precisely the kind of thing that the Labour Party said would end. It hasn't ended, Steve. It's got worse.
Well, the difference being that the Labour ministers who quit went quickly when it became obvious that they had done wrong and that they couldn't continue. What we saw under the previous government was people using every device possible to try and cling on until they were eventually driven from office. So it is different. What the chaos that you're referring to at the moment is precipitated by a very small number of people in the Labour Party who don't seem to have the country or the party's interests at heart.
OK, if you're tuning in live now, it's just approaching 5:34. Those are live pictures of that door at Downing Street. Any moment now, we're expecting Sir Keir Starmer to emerge from inside there and take a short trip over to the House of Commons, where he'll be facing the music. He'll be facing all of his MPs at the end of a day of complete and utter drama. 2:30 this afternoon, the Labour Scotland leader, Anna Sarwar, said this distraction needs to end and the leadership in Downing Street needs to change. We cannot allow the failures in Downing Street to lead the failures here. I have to be honest when I see it. About failure when I see it, he said, notice the word they promised they were going to be different, but it has not been good enough. He, of course, means the Parliamentary Labour Party in Westminster. Anna Sarwar there, cleaving any connection between himself and Sir Keir Starmer. My first priority and loyalty, he said, is to Scotland. I think we have a response to that, do we, from the SNP leader, John Swinney, and the statement says this: Scotland's First Minister has just branded Anna Sarwar an opportunist, and he called for the Prime Minister to step down. John Swinney went on, for years he has been a cheerleader for Keir Starmer and has described himself as an old friend of Peter Mandelson without a moment's thought for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. And now he suddenly wants us to believe that Sir Keir Starmer should move on, having defended all of the terrible decisions that Keir Starmer has made. Mr. Swinney continues. What today tells us is that Anna Sarwar is an opportunist and that he's prepared to use every opportunity for his own self-preservation. Well, Lord Steve McCabe there, we have a damning indictment from John Swinney towards Anna Sarwar, his Labour Party counterpart. I suppose, though, you'd expect that.
Yeah, Nothing really surprising in it. I think Anas may have opened himself to those attacks. I mean, I think he will regret what he did today. I think it was a misjudgment.
And do you think the day started with Sir Keir Starmer as the man on the political extinction list? Do you think Anas Sarwar has now frog-leaped him? He's the one who's going to be politically extinct.
Well, I don't know that that's necessarily the case, but I doubt very much that he's helped his party's electoral chances in Scotland.
What happens next in Scotland? Can Sir Keir Starmer give him the chop, or does this go to the Scottish Labour Party membership?
No, it's a Scottish issue, and it's a Scottish membership issue.
And do you think, ironically, that the Labour membership there are more likely to back Anas Sarwar than they are Keir Starmer?
Well, in the short term, but you have to remember just how many Scottish Labour leaders we've had over the last few years. So, you know, they don't tend to last that long.
And isn't the truth that Anas Sarwar's hand, in a sense, was forced by that man we had on a moment ago, Nigel Farage, and that is the polling in Scotland is incredible. The Labour Party have slipped behind Reform UK, a party they said were racist, divisive and not welcome in the country. Now, they were calling them fascists, all of the usual terminology. Not only has that bounced off the armour, but Reform UK have overtaken the Labour Party in Scotland. Perhaps Anas Sarwar believes that his party's chances of being holed below the waterline because they're led by the captain of the ship, Sir Keir Starmer.
Well, I think maybe, if there's some truth in that, I think it's maybe that leaders shouldn't pay undue attention to a few opinion polls. And really, if you're the leader in Scotland, you have to go out and make your case for getting elected in Scotland. And the issue in Scotland is the poor performance of the SNP government over many years.
Steve McKay, finally, Nigel Farage said it's OK for Labour ministers cabinet ministers to back Sir Keir Starmer on social media, but there could be a much rather grimmer atmosphere in that meeting tonight. In return for their support, what do you think they're going to ask in return from Sir Keir Starmer?
Well, I think what people will want is some guarantee that we will be able to focus on the priorities they got elected on, and they'll want a period of stability. They'll want to see improvements in public services. They'll want to see the growth in the economy that was promised, and they'll want to see prosperity in their own constituencies. And I think they'll be saying we've got to get back and focus on the priorities.
Don't you think consistency and calm after this chaos is about as likely as me flapping my arms and getting to the moon?
Well, I mean, people have a choice. They can either back the Prime Minister and let us get back onto that agenda, or they can create a period of instability, which I don't think will be in anyone's interests. Certainly no one in the country generally, and no one in the Labour Party, but it will be beneficial to Labour's opponents.
Just if you're tuning in now, it's just shortly before 20 to 6, that meeting, that crunch showdown meeting between Sir Keir Starmer and his parliamentary MPs due in Westminster, 20 minutes' time. That is the door, of course, of 10 Downing Street. Sir Keir Starmer, we believe, is still inside. Of course, it's a short distance over the way. But a lot of people are asking, why is Sir Keir Starmer taking a car, a gas-guzzling car? Why can't he just walk? It's another double standard. I think, actually, it is routine for security and safety for that to happen. And, of course, he could be heckled and stuff. I think it's not fair to say he should be walking. I think it's just a routine. Steve, that's right. This is a routine parliamentary thing.
Largely a security issue.
Security and safety. We keep expecting that door to swing open and see Sir Keir Starmer. I've had a gaggle of school children coming out posting for selfies, enjoying their moment in history, Steve McKay, because who knows what could happen tonight.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Sorry for my dad manoeuvre there. My hand gestures. My daughter will be cringing, embarrassing, as usual. The live pictures there from Downing Street. We're expecting Sir Keir Starmer to emerge any moment soon. Let's get to my next guest now, and that's the former Labour advisor, Stella Santakidou. Stella, welcome to the show. It's always a pleasure to have your company. On Friday, I honestly think you were close to tears. You were so upset about the Mandelson scandal, about particularly your beautiful home country of Greece, how it's never recovered from the Eurozone bailout, how it was pummeled, the allegations that there could be insider trading there, all of which will be part of the Mandelson investigation. As we approach this meeting at 6 o'clock now, as a Labour supporter yourself, what would you like to see happen? Would you like to see Sir Keir Starmer go?
I would like to see Keir Starmer go. I do understand the interventions by Angela Rayner and Lucy Powell. And since the two of them have said that they support Keir Starmer to remain, then I think that the reasons they have are good reasons. I think they realize that there is simply no transition team ready to go. And I'm hoping that what will happen at the PLP today, it will be risky for MPs to openly discuss with Keir Starmer and agree on a timeline by which he will leave, he will resign as Labour leader. But I am hoping that there will be some kind of discussion about whether there are any conditions under which Keir Starmer is going to resign. And I think that Keir Starmer is someone who does appreciate that when he's no longer pulling his weight, then he should be the one who at the end pulls the trigger. He did that while he was leader of the opposition, before he won the elections, when he lost a very important by-election. He was close to resigning. And the only reason he didn't is because his close advisor, Morgan McSweeney, back then convinced him to stay. And at the end, he did very, very well. And I think that there should be a test, definitely after the by-election on the 26th of February in Gordon, but possibly after the local May elections as well, to steady the ship until then, stay in place until then, give the opportunity to other candidates in good consciousness to try and prepare for a transition government and then go for a leadership election.
And Stella, who would you like to see replace Sir Keir Starmer? We keep seeing that door swing open. We're expecting the Prime Minister to emerge any moment now as he makes his way over to face the music, literally, in Parliament. Presumably you'd like to see the party tack towards the left, but we've already seen the bond markets wobble in reaction to that. A tack towards the left on a mandate that wasn't voted in, it could frighten the markets. And Nigel Farage was saying earlier on, that could precipitate perhaps an economic crisis, which might spark an early general election.
Yeah, and I'm in Birmingham right now. I watched Nigel Farage's speech, and I thought that it was very interesting, especially because at some point Andrew Rosenfield was giving an interview to Jeremy Kyle, and he kept on going on and on about Margaret Thatcher and how he's so happy to be in the Reform Party because he feels like they carry the spirit of Margaret Thatcher. And I was thinking, wait a minute, Margaret Thatcher deindustrialized the country. She was catastrophic for the working class, for all of these communities outside of London. I'm not sure that's the right message. So I think that when we're talking about the left and the right, we have to be a bit careful because people get the wrong idea. Now, for me, I'm open to a number of candidates from the Labour Party. I think, sadly, as gifted as he is in communication, Wes Streeting is not the right candidate, and that's because of the very close links he had with Mandelson and the rest of the wing of Mandelson with New Labour and Blairism, and I think that's not the right direction. I would have been happy with someone like Andy Burnham, Angela Rayner. I really value Angela Rayner, and I think that she's a great communicator. She's a working-class woman who she's really the best of Britain, and I think she would make an excellent leader. But I'm also open. I want to see people putting their case forward and let the public know, because the other candidates that would be replacing Keir Starmer do have a political hinterland, unlike Keir Starmer.
Stella, I wonder if when you say that Angela Rayner is the best of the working classes, there are 40,000 reasons why that's not the case. Isn't she just another socialist with a snout in the trough?
No, I mean, I personally think that she has been, people have looked down on her throughout her political career. People have always expected her to underperform, and she has always overperformed. And I think this is amazing about her, just the fact that she got to the place where she is. And yes, the tax scandal, that was bad. But honestly, we have forgiven so much worse from all of these super rich politicians. So why would I stop the career of a working class woman who wants to represent her community?
OK, well, we'll see on their live pictures of that fabled door swinging open, swinging shut, the main prize still inside for now. Sir Keir Starmer about to emerge and make that short and perhaps fateful journey over to Parliament to face the music, to face his parliamentarians. Stella, thank you very much for joining us on the show. I'm joined in the studio in Westminster by my next guest now. I'm delighted to be joined by the Conservative MP for Windsor, Jack Rankin. Jack, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. We're waiting for that door to swing open any time now. What would you like to see happen next?
Well, look, I think it's increasingly clear this evening that the Prime Minister's position is untenable. Nothing says it's the last days of Rome than every single cabinet minister coming out within 1 hour and declaring they have their full confidence. If you remember, that's exactly what Mr Starmer did from Dispatch Box on Wednesday about Morgan McSweeney. 100 hours later, he's gone. So this really does feel like the last days of Rome for Keir Starmer's government, and good riddance.
So you think getting the fateful vote of confidence from Keir Starmer is a bit like let's phone Sam Allardyce?
Maybe something like that. Yes. If you're going to mix your football analogies, I would say, look, a lot of this is Westminster distraction. When I speak to my constituents, they really don't care whether it's Keir Starmer, whether it's Angela Rayner, whether it's Ed Miliband, or whatever choice that clown factory are going to make next when Keir Starmer leaves us. What they care about, frankly, is what this government has done to them. It's put up their taxes, it's attacked the winter fuel allowance, it's refused to get control of our borders, the shameless Chagos giveaway. What we need to see is a change of direction from the Labour Party, not a change of personality. Else, I'm afraid they may fall down the same kind of pitfalls that we might have done sometimes in office.
I was about to mention that to you because there is a feeling, Jack, that the British electorate are watching. Let's be brutal about this. The Labour Party got in on a pretty thin, shallow majority. They called it the Loveless landslide at the time. A lot of that was due to the fact that a lot of the Conservative vote stayed at home because they were disappointed with what the Conservative Party had done, and of course the Reform Party came in, so that if you like, the vote on the right was more split than the Labour Party vote. But they've seen 14 years of chaos under the Conservatives. That's what Sir Keir Starmer kept lamenting. But then we've seen the same, if not worse, under the Labour Party. So I wonder if actually the electorate are not only getting sick to the back teeth of Sir Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, but they're sick to the back teeth of the entire political establishment who never seem to do what they're told.
So I think some of what you say is true. But when you say 14 years of chaos, I don't think that's quite fair. It took us 14 years to get there. They've managed it in 14 months. So I think comparing them as apples and apples is not quite right. You know, we did get to a point where we were in a similar kind of situation, but obviously that was after quite a fair few years. I can see you're watching that door quite eagerly. You'll be there soon, I'm sure. What I would say is that I think we've learned our lessons from the election result. With Keir Starmer, you've got someone without a backbone, and what we try to do is we try to dial down that psychodrama element. That was a message that was delivered to us strongly in July 2024 by the electorate, and instead we're united by Kemi Badenoch, who has a plan for the country. You mentioned reform. You know, Mr Farage is a phenomenal communicator, and he often is on the pulse of the nation. But does he have a plan? That party is a one-man band. I think what you saw with the Conservatives at Westminster last week was you saw Kemi being outstandingly forensic against Keir Starmer when he said on the floor of the House of Commons he knew the gasps from their benches were audible and shocking. He knew when he appointed Peter Mandelson that he had an ongoing relationship with a convicted paedophile. And then we forensically, as a team, over 7 hours, pinned the Labour Party down and created this. That's what a united team in a renewed, authentic Conservative Party under Kemi Badenoch's leadership offers. You point to reform. And I think, frankly, they're in Birmingham today, aren't they? And what's that? That's pyrotechnics and social media videos. We're here holding Labour to account, which is what the public expects of us.
And again, just to remind you, if you're tuning in, just before 10 to 6 now, the door there, obviously, of Downing Street, 10 Downing Street, we're waiting for Sir Keir Starmer to emerge. He's better get his skates on. There's got to be 600. How many MPs the Labour Party got? They're all waiting.
Over 400.
They're waiting over there to face their leader. They've no doubt got a few choice words to say. We keep expecting the next person out to be the Prime Minister. Not just yet. I wonder what's going to be said in that meeting. Oh, to be a fly on the wall, Jack Rankin. Our man Chris Hope will be at the door, hopefully with a GBNews pint glass to his ear to try and get some morsels from inside. In private, it'd be very different to in public. In public today, there's been broad support, at least on social media. A few of those tweets, I have to say, were cutted and pasted. You know, it looked a bit formulaic. But in private, you'd expect there to be a degree of fury.
Well, clearly the meeting is private, but I'm sure that at least one of those 407 Labour MPs has a WhatsApp app on their phone, so I'm sure your journalists will find out exactly what happened in that meeting. The reality is Labour MPs are furious, right? They, as you say, they had this loveless landslide, but they do have a mandate to to lead on some radical change from their point of view. It's not something I would agree with, but they've got that mandate to do that. And in 18 months, they've descended into absolute chaos. And it's clear that the Prime Minister's case is totally untenable tonight, as you say. When those messages start coming out, copied and pasted from the whips, from the Prime Minister's PPS, all put out with the same language, that means that these days are over. I'm afraid we've seen this story before on our side of the fence.
And I wonder if, Jack Rankin, they're stuck. They're stuck in something of an impasse politically, because they know if they put this to the people. Look, so, for example, Sir Keir Starmer could say to them, you better back me or I'm going to put this to the people and we're going to face the electorate. The problem with that is that Angela Rayner predicted to lose her seat to Reform UK. Wes Streeting predicted to lose his seat to a Gaza Independent. David Lammy losing his seat to the Green Party. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, losing his seat to the Green Party. If the Labour Party went to the election, the entire cabinet could lose their seats. That's not a card that they have to play. So in a sense, he's going to say to them, we better put up and shut up, and perhaps I'm your best bet.
Well, I think that's a total bluff. Constitutionally, I don't think he could do that. I think it's pretty clear in the constitutional principles that are outlined that the King should refuse such a request. You know, I think that's the constitutional position. So his backbenchers should give him full throttle today. At PMQs last week, Mrs Badenoch forced the Prime Minister to admit that he knew that Mandelson had an ongoing relationship with a convicted paedophile. And what we've seen this week, we've seen that the Prime Minister is happy to throw his advisors under the bus. But frankly, advisors advise and ministers decide. I think your viewers this evening will be wondering why advisors can be sacked for making poor advice, which most certainly was, but why ministers shouldn't be accountable and be sacked for decisions that they are responsible for. Sir Keir Starmer came to office, said he was going to govern differently, in a different manner. This is a man without a backbone that's now throwing his staff under a bus. It's time for him to go.
You mentioned that word throttle. I think a lot of people out there in the Labour Party will be thinking they'd like to throttle. You know, not literally, obviously, but the notion that Morgan McSweeney can be thrown off the top deck of the Labour Party bus, followed by Tim Allen, the Director of Communication. By the way, that's the fourth Director of Comms that the Labour Party will have lost. I mean, fair play. They can't get a good headline anywhere because nobody's on receiving mode about things the Labour Party would like us to be talking about because the calamities outweigh any good points. And, you know, as we wait for Sir Keir Starmer to emerge from that door, I just wonder how many of these Labour Party MPs are just thinking, what have I let myself in for here?
I think it's a bit different. I think you'd be surprised, right? If you look at the Cabinet, one problem that they have, I think, in formulating sensible policies for this country is I don't think there's any of them that would have, for what your viewers would consider a proper job before politics. So when they make their damaging tax rises or their policy rises, which desperately affects small business in a way which then throttles growth and cuts jobs, which is what we've seen from this government, they don't understand the implications of what that is. And when you look at their backbench MPs, none of them have had great jobs either. So you're quite right to say that here he is.
There is Keir Starmer emerging from the door number 10. Apologies if you have epilepsy. The strobe lights are going off like Billy-O getting into his ministerial car there. A short journey, of course, down that fateful journey there, down Downing Street. The gates will open at the bottom of Downing Street. Then the Prime Minister will turn right towards the Houses of Parliament. He'll be ushered into Parliament, go into the underground car park there, and then go up to face the music, to face his parliamentarians. They'll all be gathered there now. They'll all be waiting for what is now a crunch meeting. It has to be said, Keir Starmer's position is probably better than it was at 2:30 this afternoon. Just a reminder, the leader of Scotland, the Labour Party in Scotland, Anna Sarwar, basically demanded that Sir Keir Starmer should resign. The distraction needs to end, he said, and the leadership in Downing Street needs to change. We cannot allow the failures in Downing Street to lead the failures here in Scotland. I have to be honest about the failure when I see it. They promised they were going to be different, but it's not been good enough. And as Sir Keir Starmer now goes to face his parliamentarians, what will they be asking in return as the country is at a crossroads? Can Sir Keir Starmer survive? The The bookies say, even his supportive media say now, time is up for Sir Keir Starmer. The writing is on the wall. Sir Keir Starmer looks like a dead PM walking. But how long will it be before he slips through the trapdoor into political obscurity? Days, weeks, months? We simply don't know the answer to that. But 6 p.m, any minute now, is that crunch meeting. We'll be there live for it afterwards. What a day in politics. Up next, of course, is Jubes & Co, the queen of primetime debate. Jubes, just on the quiet news day, darling.
This is definitely not a quiet news day. And ladies and gents, no matter how bad your day has been today, it has nowhere near been as bad as that of our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. And as you've just been hearing, any second now, that crunch meeting does, of course, begin. We've got our eyes there, we've got our ears there, and we will be bringing you all of the latest. You tell me, will Keir Starmer still be our Prime Minister by the time my programme finishes at 7 o'clock tonight?
Thank you to our global community for watching and listening to GB News. We're not only the #1 news channel in Britain, we're chosen by you around the world.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the A92 northbound, lane 1 is shut due to flooding. Heavy traffic is building on the A4232 northbound from the A48 interchange to the M4 at junction 33. On the A1M southbound between junctions 45 and 44, a broken down